in. And secondly, if you're not able to be here, or if you're listening on your cell phone or something, you can send us something and I will read it. I actually have one of those tonight that I will read after any other citizens' comments. So, Tanishus, do we have anybody out there? Who's that?
They may have gone away for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Thinking that we're not going to be back.
Well, I'm gonna wait a little bit. David Roberts. Okay. Is David Roberts out there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please tell us what's your address?
All right. It's 3960 Summit Court.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Very good. Well, first I'd like to say thank you, Town Council and town employees, for spending valuable personal time with citizens this evening. The residents of Summit Court, as well as some residents from Heritage Ranch, are attending tonight to discuss agenda item 7H, Future Trails. Summit Court is the most isolated location in town, with a single way in and out along Orr Road. We have no access to trails, no park, and no ability to walk to the new sidewalk that dead ends at the Stacy-Orr intersection. It should be officially recognized that Orr Road between Stacy and Fitzhugh Mill is extremely dangerous due to the following conditions: downhill with a posted speed of 35 miles per hour speed limit, which is seldom observed and often exceeded. 2, drainage ditches and tree overgrowth on both sides of the roadway, so there is no ability for pedestrians to move off the roadway when cars and semi-trucks come. 3rd, blind corner at entrance to the neighborhood at Fitzhugh Mill. 4th, road is in poor condition, requiring cars to use the whole road to avoid large and numerous potholes, plus drastic drop off into drainage ditch on both shoulders. Also, the entire roadway was in fact closed on Friday due to a semi-truck running off the roadway into the ditch at that exact spot. Thankfully, no pedestrians were present. And also increased traffic flow due to GPS directing more cars and commercial vehicles this way. We are requesting that the town consider the approximate $200,000 project to landscape the median of Stacy Road and instead construct a trail between Fitzhugh Mill and Stacy along Orr. A trail project addresses numerous issues, including the town goals of connecting all trails, the overwhelming survey response from a year or so ago of more trails in town, and it provides a direct benefit to all 1,200 Heritage Ranch homes as it would be accessible from their back gate, from which they regularly walk Summit Court and Fitzhugh Mill. It would provide safe pedestrian access to miles of trails and sidewalks in Beaver Run from trailheads in Remington Park, Parkside, and Thompson Springs, and along Stacy Road. Whereas the current landscape project lacks many crucial elements, such as the median landscaping beautification project would only be partially funded by Fairview and requires Allen's participation, which Allen is not ready to fund. The median is not irrigated to sustain said expenditure. The median will likely be torn up at some point when Stacy is widened. And the median work addresses no public safety or quality of life issues for Fairview residents. We are not requesting an 8-foot wide concrete trail, simply a way to not share the roadway with pedestrians and cars and semi-trucks. We have recommended and are open to several options, such as narrow pathways, crushed granite, asphalt, as in place at west end of Roadrunner Trail, or other lower cost alternatives, as well as to full ADA compliance, as the roadway exceeds ADA tolerances anyway. We have shown a number of council members the issues and all recognize the need and significantly dangerous conditions present along Orr Road, and hope that we can count on unanimous support to undertake a public safety and quality of life project over a beautification project. Thank you for allowing me to share the concerns and hopes of the residents in our area.
Thank you very much, David. Good summary. Andre?
I'm on a headset. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I just want to add on to what was just brought up here. We actually would like to request a vote on this $200,000 decision between landscaping and the trail. This is not a new item to the city. We've been discussing this with City Council and the Parks Board for at least 2 to 3 years. I've been to numerous City Council meetings, spoken, submitted this stuff in writing, been to too many parks meetings to even count. And just within the past few days, and it's been ongoing for a number of years now, you've seen my emails, mayor, city manager, council members, as well as some of the staff. This is the final council meeting before some of our council members step aside and new ones come in. I've been through this topic for far too many times to start over from scratch. I know there's some rules and regulations in place that require, I don't know what precedent to get things done, but if we can't vote tonight, I'm hoping that we can commit to doing a special meeting, or at least we could do a contingent vote if there's still some items that we're not understanding and we can't make final decisions on today, that we can at least vote contingently on something. Mayor Lessner, you gave your clear indication upon being elected that to Randy Sandifer that this trail was a priority and it was going to get done. And I don't want to turn this day's meeting into another, we can't do anything at this time. We've been hearing this for too long, and it's time to do something. I feel, and I think everyone I've spoken to feels the same, that the choice between a beautification project and a median that we don't even fully control, or a trail that addresses public safety, citizen surveys, benefits the 1,200 homes in Heritage Ranch, it's clear. And if it's not clear, I'd like to once again, invite all of you to come back. Let's look at this issue again. Let's look at the roadway. But this time I suggest something different. Bring your children, bring your grandchildren, bring your grandparents, bring some bikes. And I'd like to know if you'd put any loved ones on that road.
Thank you, Andre. I told you we would look at this again. Okay, anyone else out there? Give people a couple minutes to see if anybody else wants to speak. I'll tell you what I'll do. In the interim, I have a written comment that is from Rich Conley out of Oakwood. And I'm going to read this, and then we'll see if anybody else has anything they want to say. So this is from Rich Conley, 980 Foxdale. Rich says, I am unable to attend tonight's town council meeting and would like the following read into the record during the public comment session. Tonight's agenda item 7A is a request to combine Kingdom Estates lots 9 and 10. The plat for Kingdom Estates shows a 15-foot wide drainage easement between these two lots. That drainage easement accepts all the stormwater flowing from Hart Road, directing the water through Kingdom Estates downhill on the east side of Redwood Creek Drive to Sloan Creek at the south end of Redwood Creek Drive. Before approving the combination of the two lots, I would like to know how the drainage ditches will be modified to continue to handle the stormwater through Kingdom Estates. Bottom line is I do not want the water redirected to the west towards Oakwood Estates unless there are major drainage improvements along the property line separating Oakwood and Kingdom Estates. Regards, Rich Conley. And we will be talking about this tonight. Okay. So that's into the record. And as I said, we will be talking about that. Anybody else, Denitris? Okay. All right, so I'm going to close the citizens' comments, and we will go forward with our regular agenda now. First item on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have 2 sets of regular council meeting minutes on October 6th and October 13th. Anybody have any changes or anything they need to make to those? If not, somebody want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve those 2 sets of minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have Charlie seconding. Any other discussion from the council? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, we passed those. All right, moving into staff reports. I think we're going to have an abbreviated financial report because Stephen had
Yeah,
planned to be here last Thursday, and he's
There are
not
2
here
staff
tonight.
members that are not here tonight.
Yes.
One of those is Stephen Ventura
And Jeff, I guess.
and Jeff Bell. They're both had already had things scheduled, so they were not able to attend tonight. Just a I'm not going to go in detail over the financial report, but I did want to point out a couple of things. Tenitras, if you go ahead and pull it up. So this represents most of the year end. It's not a full year end report. This reflects 12 months without journal entries that will be made. It gives you a fairly good picture, but as you all have heard us say before, there are expenditures or revenues that come in after September 30th that are actually appropriate to the fiscal year previously, and those get moved back into the proper fiscal year. So when you all see the audit, the final reports will include all of those transfers of funds that are appropriate to that year. So what you see is most of the revenues and expenditures, but there are some that are not reflected in here. We ended basically where we kind of thought we would be. We're in good shape. Same thing on water and sewer. We will have some adjustments that will be made into the water and sewer fund as well. There are some carryovers that will be shifted over into the appropriate fiscal year. We did see a significant increase in revenues. As you all know, we budget conservatively with water because we never know going into a year if we're going to have a wet year, a dry year, or what kind of a year. We did have some significant dry weather toward the latter part of the year. You can actually see if you go to the next slide, next one, keep going. You can see the water sales. The blue line represents 2019, which was the past year. The green line is 2020. You can see that reflects our current, that's what we experienced this year. So toward the end of the year, in July and August, we saw a significant, June, July, and August, we saw the water revenues kick back up. We did then see some wet experiences in September, so we did see the water revenue drop a bit. But at the end of the day, we collected more money than we anticipated because we did have that wet or that dry experience. If you'll go to the next slide, right there. You all had asked us to add a slide in regard to employee vacancies. We don't have any. We're full. We're fully staffed. So we'll continue to keep this updated as we have vacancies. Sales tax, if you'll go to the next slide, you can see that in October we did see we're starting to see a bit of an uptick on sales tax. I don't know if that's a reflection of what we can anticipate going forward or not, but we did see a bit of an uptick in October.
I'll just tell you, on Saturdays, there have been a lot of people in the shopping center.
And that's good.
Big time.
That's very good news for us. That's very good news for us. So we'll see if that's a trend that continues. As you all know, we projected for this upcoming fiscal year that we would continue to see a reduction in sales taxes. We'll see if that in fact happens.
And that's actually, when we look in October, that's actually what, August?
That's August.
Okay.
It's 2 months prior.
Right.
So you'll continue on to the next slide. That's just graphically showing you the breakdown on sales tax and the 380 experience. Fund summaries, we ended up generally where we thought we would in terms of revenues and expenditures. And again, there will be a few adjustments made on some of these funds as well for year-end adjustments. So it's not a final reflection of revenues and expenditures, but it's pretty close. One of the questions that we received, Cynthia, you had asked on how are we spending the COVID relief money. This is just an excerpt really from the budget that shows you where the categories are in terms of money that we've received and where we anticipate we're going to be spending it. The total amount received was $660,931. You can see the breakdown. We're anticipating, and again, this is split up between PP&E, it's IT expenses, personnel expenses, and capital equipment are the primary areas that we're utilizing the dollars. The transfer to the general fund is the big expense, other than the ambulance that we acquired. That's the capital outlay, but the biggest part of the capital outlay. if we don't have that ambulance in place this week, we'll be pretty close to it. It's ready to go. We
Jeff had a
haven't
picture of it.
outfitted it yet.
Jeff had a picture of it, didn't he?
We
the other day?
do. I don't have it.
Okay.
We'll send a picture of it out. It's we've been up, we've checked it. It meets all of our requirements. What will happen is we'll get it back here and then we'll outfit it. So it'll take about a month for us to get it in service. But we will have it in place. And again, as you know, we have to expend those dollars and receive those capital items by the end of by the end of this calendar year, and we will achieve that.
So what does it mean? Is 109 to the general fund? What is that for?
The bulk of that is for public safety salaries. We're not adding people. There's no new people in there. It's just offsetting some of our costs for COVID. On the fire side, for example, we've added a lot of overtime because of the time necessary to clean the ambulances. We are covering those costs, overtime costs that are caused because of COVID. Also, the additional cost of cleaning the ambulances, we're getting reimbursed for that. So we're utilizing those activities that are COVID related, that are public safety. We're asking for reimbursement, and those are valid expenses under the CARES Act.
Okay. So none of that applied to our staff here. It's just
It is, yeah, it's police and fire expenses, it's
that's what I
salary
mean,
expenses.
Public safety, but not our internal.
No, it's public safety.
So we'll spend about 170 next year in year 21 and 109 this year.
Right. Yeah.
But
And
Because the
again,
CARES Act ends in December,
Yeah.
so we have 3 months of
right.
fiscal year 2021 that is covered. And that's what
So in total, it's 279 though, right? Towards salaries?
That's not all salary. Some of that's legal expenses as well that we've paid for. We had Clark do quite a bit of legal work for us on policies and procedures and making sure that what we were doing met the legal requirements of the CARES Act. And so all of those legal expenses are also borne in the general fund, and that's a transfer into the general fund for that.
Do you have any idea about how much that is?
I can get you the exact number. I want to say it's around somewhere around 10,000, maybe
Oh,
cumulatively.
yeah, okay.
It's not a large number.
When I talk about legal fees, I always get scared. It's now I have nightmares.
It's not a huge number. So this is our estimate, and again, our goal is to utilize those dollars. And these are the categories in terms of how we anticipate spending.
And what's the utility fund? What is that portion? The 2,000?
We did have some. We had some very direct related COVID expenses in the water and sewer employee side, where they did some overtime work completely related to COVID, and we were able to utilize it for that. It's not a big number, but we were able to reimburse the.
In the material and
Water fund.
supplies, that's all PPE type
Yeah.
gear? Or?
It is.
So whenever you do your budget at the end of the year, will these numbers go into the budget, like under that department, or will they just be COVID expenses?
Some of them will reflect. Well, you can see how we've broken it out. We showed it as a transfer to the utility fund and the general fund. Those will be reflected as dollars that are transferred into those funds. And then we have some direct expenditures that are coming out of the fund, the COVID relief fund as well. The ambulance is being paid for. The computers that we bought, all that's being paid for directly out of the COVID relief fund.
But it won't be categorized when it actually gets spread. It'll
Yes,
go.
Cynthia, can you speak on the mic, please?
I haven't seen you in a long time, Ricardo. You should come to a meeting every once in a while. I do this on purpose so you can give me attention. Yeah. So that's. I was just wondering if the salaries will go into the department, or will it?
They already are.
Okay, they already.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're reflected in the departments.
Okay.
This is just a transfer to offset that cost.
Okay.
Yeah, we've already approved the budget. This is just, we're getting.
This is a
ready-
reflection of the
free
budget.
money for that, what was in the budget.
Right. But this is on top of what we budgeted.
No, this was included in the budget.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. So that helps a bunch. Yep.
Yeah, just, we're not having to use general tax dollars for this. We're getting it from our friends at the
Yeah,
federal.
we're able to offset some of our
And that's what
costs.
I guess
Yeah.
that's what I was concerned about, just in trying to sort it all out, was this going to be on top of
No,
the budgeted
No.
amount
right.
for our payroll?
No,
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just paid for by the federal government as opposed to our tax.
these are expenses we're incurring. They're just being reimbursed.
Reimbursed from
So
another
will that
source.
end up with a cash windfall then?
No, it's reflected in the budget that you approved.
I don't remember in the revenue section, the COVID revenue being,
Yeah, it was
Added.
in there.
got it.
It was
Okay,
in-
any council, anybody else have any comments, questions on finance stuff?
The next, let me cover this
Yeah.
one slide too. Cynthia, you had
That
asked
was a
about
specific request.
expenditures on the fire station. So just we'll include this going forward so you can kind of see where we are. The fire station one project, the approved budget with all of the alternates that the council has approved, $8,123,873,000. The expenditures as of the end of 9/30 were right at a little over $2 million. The bulk of that is construction, and then we've spent $593,055 with the architectural, all of the design costs.
Julie, is construction on schedule?
I'm sorry?
Is construction on schedule?
Yes. It is.
So the 593 includes all fees that we've ever been charged for the architect, even
For
going
this
back-
project, for this fire station
Does that
project.
include the work done for the bond, for the 20%?
No, because that was not for this project. That was for a previous project.
Okay, but it was the same company though, right? That did
It
all the
was,
specs
mhm.
and all that.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea how much that was?
Not off the top of my head.
And then what was the other question I asked you? Because now I can't remember.
I think-
It
I think
crossed
this
my
was-
mind just a second ago, and then
I think this was everything. If not, just bring it
I'll
up
just
if you
email
think of it.
If you think of something, yeah. All right, any other comments about finances? Go on to our police report.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Is this thing on? Does it sound
No, it doesn't seem to be.
mean, but
I think it's on.
okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. On the police side, our activities were actually about the same as they were last month. Our alarm calls were nearly unchanged. Same thing with accidents. We had a few more mutual aid calls, but a lot of these mutual aid calls were actually mutual aids within our jurisdiction, just assisting some other folks, mostly within the town of Fairview. Some examples of that were covering several troopers out on the interstate, working with the county, going to certain locations within Fairview because of something that they were working maybe in their cities and things like that. But it shows up as a mutual aid. Most of the other calls remained unchanged. Traffic enforcement was consistent with the past. We had less Part 1 offenses this month. We only had 2. One was a burglary of a vehicle out on the 24-hour fitness parking lot, and the other was an assault out at Heritage Ranch. Then
Range?
we had several Part 2 offenses, and Part 2 offenses, just for in case y'all are wondering, are things like DWIs, drug arrests, evading arrest, running from the police, different things of that nature. Let's see here. Reports generated were pretty much the same.
Wait, so those 12 were like DW, they're traffic offenses?
Yes,
DWIs?
I think 3 or 4 of them were DWIs. A couple of them were evading arrest with vehicles where people, we try to stop somebody from going 120 mile an hour on the freeway, and then they decide they don't want to stop. Others are, we make a traffic stop and it turns into some kind of a drug bust. And so there are offenses there that gets added on. The traffic enforcement was up just a little bit in terms of citations and warnings, and we cleared 36 outstanding warrants by our warrant bailiff warrant officer for which netted and collecting about a little over $10,000 this month. So, anybody have any?
Has there been any, I haven't heard anything lately, and maybe we don't need to hear about too much of it, but, the sheriff and there was a coalition of sheriffs that were working with local police departments and such with drug interactions coming up 75 and highways. Has anything happened? There was kind of like a lot of activity there for a little while.
We've stayed away from that in terms of any participation. We don't really do any drug interdiction.
Okay.
There is some of that is going on. That's one of the reasons why we've seen an increase in our mutual aids covering some DPS troopers on the highway.
Okay.
So some of them are part of that, but we've stayed in the background on that.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a presentation. I don't know, it's been a couple months ago, but they had got a lot of bad guys.
Yes, sir.
It was really good.
We don't hear a lot about it, but there's still a lot of drugs that travels up and down US 75. It's the main corridor for drugs and money.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for our police chief? Thank you, Gramber.
Thank you.
Anybody got to talk for Jeff?
No, well, you have the report in your
No.
packet. When Jeff is here for the next meeting, we'll have him go over both of the months if there are any questions related to this month as well as next month.
Okay. Aim's going to talk about construction. Oh, there he is.
He is.
Just a quick update on the water pumping station. Right now where they're at, they are putting in a temporary irrigation system right now because all that dirt they're fixing to plant in hydromulch and get it up from seed. And so right now there's a lot of vegetation work going on just to stabilize the entire site. And they still haven't poured the last bit of asphalt right there at the road to connect the concrete to the road. TxDOT doesn't let you take your concrete all the way to their asphalt road. You have to transition to asphalt. So, and they're supposed to do that one day this week, finish up that asphalt. And once that's done, we'll do a walkthrough and look for a punch list. And basically, if there's not any outstanding items, they'll be done. Once again, we are going to be looking at landscaping this after they leave. It'll be a separate project. I did meet with two of the homeowners that actually live adjacent to the sites. The one on the west, and both of them are very good to talk with. Even though there's a larger tank there now, I think the site, and I think they'll admit to it as well, the site actually looks better than it did before, because even though it was a smaller pumping station, it was very grown up, and we had a lot of areas back there where we would dump material for years. It was the only place we had to dump. So now the site's cleaned up. The property owner on the west side of the property, all they wanted was just a line of cedars for screening all the way down their property line. They just asked for as large of caliper cedar tree that we could afford. We were willing to put in. They didn't want too small of a tree that would take too long to form a screen. They've done some screening themselves. I first threw out just kind of putting in some screening where they're in some gaps areas, but as you know, a line of trees isn't always a complete screen. They prefer to have our line behind their line. And I said, that's fine. I'll be glad to take that back to council and put together a plan on that. When I met with the homeowner on the north side, to my surprise, they said they don't want anything blocking their view.
Huh.
They actually are up on a hill. They have this nice view of the valley and the treetops down in the valley. And even our new tank is back far enough to where it doesn't block that view. And so their concern was totally different. They do not want that view blocked. She did say she might be interested in something ornamental that's got some color to it, but doesn't get very tall because she does not want her view blocked. So it's just, we have two property owners with two different goals. She did ask, hey, could I come back? Could we come back with a sketch, some kind of a drawn up plan for them to take a look at? And so I told them that we'd be glad to do that, to sketch out. And they had some recommended planting types. There's some plants that they put in their yard they said might be fine on our property as well. So we'll take a look at it. I've got to decide whatever plants we do put in, do we need to put in a permanent irrigation system? I prefer to do something that's drought tolerant that doesn't require a permanent irrigation system once you get them established. So I'm going to meet with them and get with the landscaper and see if we can come up with some materials that meets their need. I know the cedars we can get cedars established without a long term.
So on the west side is, that's part of the budget to do that, or we have to approve something more?
Yeah, it was not included in the budget with the pump station. Historically, we've just told the property owners that when this new pumping station, when it gets enlarged, it would be screened of some sort. We've committed to them in years past. We actually have a little plan we drew up years ago. There was nothing elaborate on it. It just basically showed some screening. And so anyway, what I like to do is come back with a sketch of something that maybe both homeowners would be good with, and if after I meet with them, come back to council, price it out, and see what it would cost. See if it's something we could install, or maybe have something that a landscaping company could install with or without an irrigation system. That's a big part of the cost. Obviously, having a licensed irrigation specialist design a permanent system costs money as well. So anyway, that's kind of. And then also, council has discussed putting in some screening next to the roadway as well, something to screen from the road, just outside the fence. So that would all be included as well. So anyway, but before we did anything, I just wanted to meet with both the property owners and kind of get a feel for what they're looking for. And it wasn't the same. So,
James, I've had comments from a few people that they were wondering if you're going to be landscaping the what you can see from Country Club. But
yeah,
like we have chain link fence around there, and they're not even allowed in Fairview. And so one concern was that, are we going to screen all that? Which I told them I was pretty sure we were, but I'm just mentioning it to make sure.
Yeah, that was kind of my last point, which is council had already floated the idea of maybe putting in some screening from the road. Absolutely.
Right.
So,
I thought you had. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. So let us kind of draw up some landscaping plans and cost it out. Make sure the property owners that are adjacent are good with it, because they're the most impacted by what we just built. And then let me come back to council and let them take a look at it and weigh in and see if number one, based on the budget, can we move forward with it, or is something we need to gather some money first and then do it in pieces. So.
Is there any money left in that?
Yeah, we've got money to
In the
cover.
project,
This is not going to be a terribly
not
expensive project.
Okay.
I think we'll be able to fund it. We'll bring it back to you all for your review, but it shouldn't be a overly expensive project.
Okay.
Well, I don't agree that it impacts them more than it does driving by it, because I do think it would be nice if it had a little bit more curb appeal, because I drive by it all the time, and I think everybody else does too. So I think it's worth spending a little money to make it.
Put a row of hollies or something in there.
Yeah.
Cedar trees would give you a good screen in there.
Okay. I got a note on that. We'll do that. One question, James, on Countryside, is that pretty much all done? All the extra sodding and stuff?
Yeah, I just did the walkthrough with the contractor, went over some fine notes. The pipe within a pipe, the contractor said they could not guarantee, they did not feel comfortable trying to, the solution I was through.
This is the conduit under the road.
Take the inside pipe out and float some concrete in there, some really self-leveling flowable fill. They were very hesitant in doing that. They were afraid that the height of the concrete inside something would go wrong, then they'd end up having to tear out the entire pipe and start over. They were very uneasy about moving forward with that. So I said, that's fine. It wasn't part of your bid. I just wanted to at least give y'all consideration. I'm going to meet with our Public Works and see, because we only need about 3 yards of concrete. So I'll get with Public Works and see if that's probably something we could do in-house, just floating in some concrete. So we'll look for an alternative on that one. The Parsons had asked for a little bit more sod in the corner where some of the contractors had parked. And I was going to put that on a punch list, but since that time, I guess with all the watering they did, the grass behind the sod greened up. It's alive and it's coming back. So I hate to lay sod on top of sod because it's coming back. It did look pretty worn down when they first were parking on it, but the grass, just due to the watering, probably from the water truck, it's just coming back really well. So it looks a lot better than it did. And so this spring it'll be thick again. I walked it with them. They leveled up some holes like at the Seaber's place. We walked it. They did some more work over there. They did some more work up along Home Place, just leveling in some areas, make it easier to mow when the grass comes in. I talked to Wayne Sieber, and he said what they've done right now, I think it'll work, but he said we're going to wait and let the spring grass come take over and see if it needs any more attention. If it needs anything else, we can always come back in with some sand in the spring. But he was good with where it was at, just kind of letting the grass grow and see. He also thinks it's going to be a lot better once the grass starts growing again and gets to start mowing it again. Other than that, the job really looks pretty if you drive through there. It's really, the grass, they really pour.
He actually did a really good job.
Looks really good. They did a good job on the cleanup. I was really pleased. We got all the hydrants in River Oaks, and we worked with several of the homeowners. Some of the homeowners did not want a fire hydrant right where we were going to put it. So we made some adjustments. I got with the fire chief whenever we had to move one, make sure he got his approval, and so that it's still in a good location. We were able to get all the hydrants in, and we added 9 hydrants in a subdivision that really did not have nearly enough fire hydrants, and they were so far apart spacing wise. So this is going to add a much higher level of fire safety for those streets: Timberwood, River Oaks Drive, Creekwood Drive North, and Creekwood Drive South. Those are the streets that we had.
Will they get do you know, will they get maybe a lower price on their home insurance?
Well, they sure might. I brought that up with the ones that I spoke with to please contact your insurance company and let them know if you've got a hydrant in front of your house or near your house. It never hurts to ask. So I did mention that to them. I'm not going to guarantee. I don't know who the carriers are, but I think it's definitely worthwhile mentioning to them. But everybody seemed to be pleased with the final hydrant locations, and we really didn't have any major issues.
Okay. Any comments, just questions for James on any of the construction stuff going around? You made the comment about asphalt connecting into the TxDOT roads. That they had to do that at Fire Station 1. They just did that this week, I think.
That's right. Yeah, they just made the asphalt connection.
I saw that.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right, we move on. We're moved to council action and discussion items. We have an item that, who's going to talk about that? Israel?
Yeah.
All right, Israel, you're on.
Am I on?
Yeah, this is the Kingdom Estates edition that Rich Conley talked about in his note to us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll keep this one short. It's fairly simple. This is a request of approval of an amended plat for proposed lot 9A, Block A of the Kingdom Estates edition. It's about a 4-acre site, and it's located at 651 Redwood Creek Drive. It's zoned for the RE2 Two-acre Ranch Estate, and simply combines the 2 existing undeveloped lots at the end of the cul-de-sac into one single lot for the future development of a home. The combined lot meets all the design standards of the RE2 district, and as with any plat, this meets all the design standards of the subdivision in the zoning ordinance, so the approval on this is fairly ministerial. I know we have some comments out there regarding the revised drainage pattern on this, so if James is there in council and he could cover that question for us, I would appreciate it.
Hey, Israel, before we go to that, just a question. We're looking at a picture of the Kingdom Estates addition at the end of that street, and where the two lots are being combined. There's a lot off to the west of that there doesn't seem to be any access. I'm just curious about it.
That they actually have access off that long private drive that comes down off of Hart Road.
Oh, okay. It's coming from the north. Okay, I see it. I
comes
got
from the
you.
north.
I was wondering what that house was there, but that's exactly right. That's at the end of that's that. Okay, I've been down there once. Okay, thank you. I got it. So James, you're going to talk about drainage
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
this?
I'll talk about the drainage. Yeah, right now, there is a drainage ditch designed to catch the water flowing. There's water that comes off of that pasture from the north, and it flows down into this subdivision. And just like what wasn't done in previous subdivisions like Bluebird, where we're actually a downstream subdivision, and they have to account for how they're going to receive the water from the north. There was an existing channel between these two lots, and I got with them. I said, well, if you're going to combine those lots, they immediately said they wanted to move the drainage. They initially were going to go down the west side and then curve right around to the west side of the cul-de-sac, move it to the west. I walked the property, and there were 4 or 5 large quality trees. So guys, can you move this drainage over, because you're going to wipe out some really, really nice trees, and which is a real issue when you've got so much land to work with. So they went back and they said, well, if that being the case, can we take the drainage ditch over to the east side of the property, because there's much less vegetation there. I said, yeah, I mean, long as your ditch is designed by a civil engineer and it accounts for the 100-year runoff event. And so Brandon Davison with Corwin Engineering was their engineer on record, and he designed the ditch to the east side within a 35-foot drainage easement. And basically, the ditch comes down, it picks up the water where the old one did, but instead of running between the two lots, it turns immediately east, turns south, runs down the east property line, and then turns back to the west and puts the water back at the cul-de-sac. So the point A to point B is basically the same, just a different route. It's a fully designed drainage ditch to accommodate it's right about 50 CFS of water for the 100-year event.
So the water eventually comes down the west side of Redwood Creek, or the east side of Redwood Creek?
It comes down the east side.
The east side,
yeah.
Okay.
And there's 2 pipes. There's a culvert underneath. It does go back to the west side, but there's some culverts underneath the road there that carries it from east to west. The reason I did that was because there was another really large, nice tree right on the northwest side of that cul-de-sac. In order to save that tree, they put in some culverts underneath the road, which wasn't inexpensive. And so basically with this new channel design, it's still point A to point B, just a different route, fully designed by a civil engineer. I've reviewed the plans. They look good. There's not an issue with, he did accommodate the water.
So James, the flows that are going through this channel and eventually through Redwood Creek Drive is the same.
That's right. That's right. It's the same amount of CFS. He just had to take it. He had enough fall to go the longer route.
And right now it does.
He designed it for 0.5% grade. That's all he needed for the 50.
And right now it flows along the west side of Redwood Creek Drive.
No, it flows right between the 2 lots that he's combining.
I know. No, I mean now as it gets under the culvert on Redwood Creek Drive.
Yeah.
It goes south on the west side of Redwood Creek.
South on the east side.
On the east side.
South on the east side to avoid a really nice tree.
Okay.
Then there's culverts underneath the new road there to carry it back to the west side.
I see. Okay.
And where are those culverts at? They're not on this. They're further south of
No,
this?
they're just south of the cul-de-sac. I mean, just south of it.
So just for my benefit, so this is what we're seeing here now. Is that what it was, or this is what it is, or going to be?
Well, that's just the platted
right.
easement for where the channel is going to be. The channel falls within this new easement that he's dedicating along the east side. He dedicated some additional easements for some slopes. The channel obviously had to have some laid back slopes to fit.
So if he puts a house in there that covers up in the middle of that, what does that do?
The easement in the middle says abandoned under this plat.
I can't read any of that.
Right.
Yeah, the
Instead of
water's
go-
going to run along the east side of this combined lot.
The right side of the screen. So he's going to grade it to the east. Is that what he's going to do the entire lot?
Yeah, it's the ditch will be totally on down the east side of this one combined lot.
So he is going to grade it to the east. The whole
That's
4+ acres. It's all going to get graded to the east.
That's right.
Well, no, I mean, the lot can still grade to the south, right? Isn't there a portion of it now that slopes towards the cul-de-sac?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the new ditch follows this new easement dedicated in the plat. I mean, I've got I guess Israel didn't supply the actual channel, but the actual ditch, the new ditch, comes down from the north, travels east to the corner, and then it turns and goes south all the way down to the cul-de-sac. Then it turns west towards the cul-de-sac. So it kind of makes a U-shape.
But the lot itself, how does it slope from north to south?
Yeah, north to south.
Okay, so the drainage from the lot itself will continue to go surface runoff towards the cul-de-sac and then into the side ditches or the bar ditches.
That's right. This channel is just for off-site water.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
James, will this ditch be as deep as the one in front of the Blazes house?
No, as deep as which one?
Yeah, the one there on the corner where the fire,
The fire hydrant.
where the fire easement is that enters
Oh,
into Oakwood Estates. There's a huge ditch in front of the Blazes house, the people that built right there on that corner. Are you going to have something that deep, or are you guys going to do coverts, or how are you going to handle the drainage on the east side of the road?
Yeah, he's still doing an open ditch as opposed, because he's got so much room to lay back those slopes. They're dedicating some extra easement where they need to lay the slopes back. The ditch is not going to be super deep. In other words, if you go back in there now, it's already cut. And so by moving it to the east, they're not really cutting through a major hill or anything. In fact, when you go east, there's an old pond there. And so they're actually going to be going closer to where there was an old pond. Ponds are usually the lowest area and lowest point on some land. And so he's actually not cutting through a hill by going east. So to your point, is it getting deeper than the one that's there now? And I'd say no.
Well, it's just
So
that particular one
Yeah.
is really deep. I don't
Yeah,
know if
this
you
is
know
not like that. I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. But I guess the point on this, let me try it.
Okay.
There's no new water.
Right.
The water that this in the middle there where it was water coming from Hart Road. And what they've did is they've moved that water to the east side of these two lots. But it eventually ends up, when it gets down into the cul-de-sac, it eventually ends up back to where it was originally. When it was coming down the middle, it was going down the west side. It's now coming down on these lots. It's coming down the east side. Down there, then it goes under culverts and goes down the west side again.
That's right.
Well,
Am I getting that?
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
The only change on this is that instead of the water coming from Hart going down to the cul-de-sac has now been moved from where it shows on this picture we're looking at to the east side of that lot.
Yeah.
What they've created, the 4-acre lot.
That's right. He's putting in a dedicated easement.
Right.
And absolutely.
Yeah, the concern I have about this development, and I think I mentioned this on the list of items that hopefully we could talk about, particularly since we have Hamilton here tonight, is that, all of the discussion we've had about drainage, we have underground water, we have a quarry, an old quarry underneath that, right in that area there. We have the Senecola's house immediately to the west of those two lots, and it's north. And so one of my concerns is what kinds of precautions are you requiring, for example, commercial drains or anything to capture underground water and to test for that up there?
Yeah, the purpose of this channel realignment is to channel the way surface water flows. Is captured on the surface between these two lots. That's all you're looking at today, to consider whether or not this owner can take an existing channel that's there today to capture surface water from the north, and can he just reroute it? That's all. That's what's.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and maybe we can change it. We can change the subject for now, but I don't know how we can vote on this lot until we know more about what's happening on the drainage over there. You know, we've got a potential compromised creek bed. Most of the problems that we've been discussing for the last several months with the Bradford's property and the Farkas's property, and we have a new house that's being built right on the creek. They wanted us to let them have a more shallow setback, and the planning and zoning turned that down. It's one of the biggest houses in Fairview. And recently, I think we talked about this recently, that whole channel's been, dug out now that goes into the creek. But I've been wondering if we should have an impact study over there, because we right now we have a lot of notice that there's underground water issues and that there's possible Sloan Creek issues. And we haven't had any ordinances in the past that have required the developers to do any kind of an impact. And so I recognize that we're talking about voting on whether we're going to let them have a 4-acre tract, but we're changing the what was originally designed. And I see what you're saying is that we're going to take it over here and then we're going to cut it back over.
The other thing that they're doing drainage wise, right now, instead of putting 2 houses there, they're putting 1 house, which is going to be less pervious surface. So this is one of the things we talked about on the Monotone track. Can we get fewer houses? We've got a developer right now that actually wants to reduce by rooftop.
Well, I understand that. I'm more concerned about, just while we're on the topic of what you're going to do about the drainage there, so we can move forward and talk about it when we're talking about drainage. But the way that curved is on the front of the Blazes house, that's why I was asking, are we going to have that same type of a great big deep ditch on the other side? Have we thought that far ahead? Because now you're talking about putting the house in the middle of 2 lots, and the water, I don't know how that affects velocity. I'm not an engineer, you are, and Hamilton's here. But that's really my biggest concern, is that we have other problems that have been brought up multiple times in council meetings. And so I'm just wondering if we're addressing that while we're addressing a redirection of where the water is going to flow.
Yeah, as far as groundwater capture, most of what he's looking at doing is taking water coming off of the Hart Road area, which is making its down to Sloan Creek. Some of it's subsurface and some of it's surface. Whenever they dig a channel like this, there's always a good benefit with groundwater. If you get fortunate enough that a surface channel intercepts groundwater, then any groundwater migration that was going underneath that land could end up in a channel, which is a benefit. Actually, it's a benefit if you do. Now, there's never a guarantee that you're going to capture subsurface water when you dig a channel. Sometimes you do. It'll actually leach in. We in fact, Harper Landing did just that. They dug several channels and they actually were able to capture some subsurface water. One of the ways you deal with that, we had to deal with that, was you end up having to put in some hardscape to deal with the amount of flow that runs all the time. In this case, do I know this high up on the track, are they going to intercept any surface water? I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard to say. They're further up the hill, so there's probably a less likelihood. But once again, it's close. It's close to. What I will say is they're moving the water further away from Oakwood Estates. So if I'm the Senecolas, for example, here's a channel. It's northeast of my house. And here's a homeowner that was looking at moving it further to the east, moving some of that water away from my house. If I'm seeing that as a benefit. Hey, you moving some of that drainage further away from me?
Yeah, I actually can see that it's instead of having a house closer to their property, you have one theoretically that's going to be in the middle of the lot, assuming that that's where it ends up, and that you're directing the water to the east side of the road.
Yeah. And that's the other benefit they'll see.
So I could see that.
Instead of 2 houses, two houses sending water to the south as opposed to one house. Now, so there's some benefit with less density, moving the water over to the east.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, they're two different topics, and so maybe when we get to the drainage discussion, we can talk about that
So
more.
one of the things we would typically do is the builder or a representative of the builder around? Are they on?
Israel didn't. Okay.
Brandon? Brandon, is there anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, hi. Good evening, Mayor Lessner.
Hey,
It's
Brandon.
Brendan. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Brendan Bush at 611 Redwood Creek, Fairview, Texas. Thank you guys for listening to us. Yeah, I think that everything James said, I would just like to reiterate is that, number one, less density. So we're going to reduce the number of homes by one home. So less rooftop, less impermeable surface. And to address Richard Conley and Brugge, we're going to be actually redirecting any of the drainage from Hart Road that we're capturing, actually moving it further east, which is a benefit for everybody as well. So we see this as a plus for, Fairview as a whole, and just that, people like less density, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Any questions for Brandon?
Can you,
Brandon, where is it going to come back across on when it comes back west? Where will that be in relation to the Blazes house?
Well, it's going to cross underneath the street in the same location that the culverts are already at. So we're not talking about increasing any water, increasing anything that's not already there. And it's going to be coming across at the exact same location that it is currently. I mean, the culverts are in place. We won't be changing that at all.
Okay.
Roland?
can we put that just picture back up? I just have a quick question. So Brandon, just make sure I understand. So over here where it says Betty Jane Brown, so we're just going to take the water that's going to come south from there and just capture it basically right up there at the northern part of the two lots, and then move it east. Is that what's going to happen?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've actually already got a swell there running, west to east along the northern side of those two lots. So rather than just bringing it straight down the middle, which is where it's currently done, we're just going to go ahead and take it a little bit further east and then bring it down the east side, down that drainage easement, all the way down, and then, cut it off across. It'll actually cut directly into the east side of that cul-de-sac.
And today, real quick, that water just sheets down both from the Mark Well property and the Betty Jane Brown property?
Everything north of us of
Yeah.
Kingdom Estates is currently sheet flow.
Okay.
And we're capturing it in a swale now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So are you going to be changing any of your specifications from right now? It looks like you just have a drainage ditch in between, in the middle. How are you going to redirect it over to go east?
Same way. So we're just going to be creating, our civil engineer, Warren Corwin, has actually put a plan together for us, and we're actually just going to create a swell.
And so will that back up to Stone Creek then? Or those other lots that are to the east of it, those are all in Stone Creek, right?
He might not have heard you. Hey, Brandon?
Yes, sir. Say again.
Go ahead.
Those back up to Stone Creek, right? The ones on the east side?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So they'll get more water flow over there.
No, ma'am.
They won't, will it be
No, ma'am.
underground, or will it be in a ditch? Will it be
No, yeah, no.
like in front of the Blazes house, or will it be a more shallow ditch?
Way shallower than what's actually in front of the homes in Kingdom Estates, just because obviously the water that we're carrying everything north is much less than the water that we're carrying down further south.
Okay.
Yeah, no water will be leaving Kingdom Estates that we capture. It'll all be maintained within Kingdom Estates. So Stone Creek, nor Elanka to the west of us there, west of Lot 9 there, nobody else will see any more water. Matter of fact, they'll probably actually see less.
Why would they see less?
Well, if we're putting a swell down the east side of that property, then the backside of their property potentially would be draining into that swale as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So I think one of the things we have to do, we have to take action on this tonight, right? And the action to take would be simply to agree to combine those two lots,
To approve the replat of those
to
lots.
approve the replat of those two lots. All right. So does anybody want to make a motion to go forward with this?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
That's
Ricardo.
Ricardo.
Anybody want to second? Charlie, second. Council, any other discussion on this?
Mayor, it's actually an amending plat, not a replat.
Okay, it does say amended plat. You're right. Okay. So is that, Ricardo, is that okay? We're amending a plat?
That's correct. Yeah.
Charlie?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion, council? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
And any abstained? Cynthia abstains. Okay. All right. Moving on. Next one, we're going to hear from Hamilton. We're going to talk about the drainage system, kind of a continuation of what we did about 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to let you turn it over to you, Hamilton. Thanks for being here tonight, by the way. Your second time since our.
Oh, good evening, everybody. So tonight I'm going to share with you the results of our low flow assessment of the regional detention facility and the impacts to stream bank erosion on Sloan Creek. Also, after that, I'm going to talk briefly about some bioengineering methods for controlling stream bank erosion for some of the affected residents along Sloan Creek.
Ricardo, can you all hear this?
Yeah, it's a little bit low, but we can hear it.
Might get a little closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear
Yeah, that's
okay.
much better.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the regional detention low flow assessment, the goals was number one, to determine the impact of controlling the two-year flow within the regional detention facility and see what the impact is to the channel velocities and consequently the impact to the stream bank erosion on Sloan Creek. And then to do a benefit cost analysis and a recommendation to the town council whether or not the facility should be built. So some relevant information first before we get into the results and all of that. Unvegetated clay stream banks like Sloan Creek, or at least the eastern part of Sloan Creek, they can withstand velocities of about 4 feet per second without being eroded. Vegetated stream banks can withstand velocities of about 4 to 6 feet per second. So that kind of breaks the what's erosive, what's an erosive velocity and what's a non-erosive velocity for the type of material that we have on the stream banks on Sloan Creek. The channel velocity plays a critical role, probably the most critical role in stream bank erosion, but it is not the only factor. Other factors are the bank material properties, the stream alignment, the angle of approach of the flow, the stream bed material, and the vegetation cover. So just something to keep in mind. So these are the steps that we're taking to determine the impacts of the two-year flow in the retention facility. Number one, the previous hydrologic model that we had for the 100-year flow in the detention facility was revised to also to regulate the 2-year discharges. And the first step on that was to do an estimation of how much you're going to have to cut down the stream bank on Sloan Creek in order to be able to divert those 2-year flows, those low flows, diverting to the side to go into the detention facility. Then the outlet structure of the detention facility was modified to regulate the 2-year flows in addition to the 100-year flow. And then the additional storage that was required was calculated. And finally, the peak flows were calculated for the 2-year detained condition. Once you had those flows, then the next step would be to go into the hydraulic model, plug in the detained flows, run that model, and compare the channel velocities from that run against the existing channel or the existing or undetained channel velocities, and then do a comparison between the two and see how much of a decrease we had and what the impact would be on erosion on the stream banks. The third step is to do a cost estimate for the design and construction of the original detention facility. And then having all that information, you can do a benefit cost analysis to see if it's a viable alternative or not.
Kind of the difference between what we talked about last time. We did 100-year last time. This year we're doing 2-year.
Yes, we're actually doing, we also have the 10 for the 100. So we're doing, in addition to the 100, we're doing the 2-year, which is gonna basically increase the amount of storage required. So this is the first step, which was to determine how much you're gonna have to cut down the top of the bank in order to divert some of that flow into the detention facility. So what you're looking at here is a cross-section of the hydraulic model, just where the diversion structure, which is called a weir, a lateral weir, will be constructed. The two blue lines that you see are the water surface elevations. The top line is the 100-year water surface elevation. And as you can see, it's contained within the channel. And the lower line is the 2-year water surface elevation. So in order to divert part of the 2-year flows, we obviously have to cut the bank down below the 2-year water surface elevation. And that's why you see represented by that red line, which is showing that in average, you have to cut down about 20 feet from top of bank down to the new elevation, which would be roughly about 4 feet above the stream bed.
Are you actually talking about the creek bed? Or am I I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Do I?
That's the banks of the creek.
The banks of the creek. Mm-hmm.
Like we did at Harvest Landing, to get water to flow out of the creek into a...
We can't hear that, guys.
I'm sorry, I turned my thing off. Yeah, so we're talking about the banks of the creek, and to get water to flow into a detention area or something, to do that, to get the 2-year flow, we have to cut down 20 feet, is what he's saying, if I heard that right. Cut down the bank or make some sort of a place where water would flow, because it has to go down 20 feet, because bring it down.
Okay.
For the 2-year flow.
For the 2-year.
Yeah, because we did the 100-year flow, wasn't quite as far down. To do the 2-year flow, you have to go further because it doesn't get as high.
Oh, okay.
That's
and
fine.
is this in a particular location, or is this just, you know, what you would do?
Yeah, this is a very specific location. That's where the weir would be located.
Where is that?
So that would be the upstream end of the detention facility. If you remember the picture that we had last time, where the detention facility is located, so that would be.
Hey Tony, this is the original detention.
Meandering Way.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the property that's on Meandering, off of Meandering.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then the next step was to modify the outlet structure, which ended up being, as expected, a larger structure, because now we're regulating the 2-year in addition to the 100-year flows. Then we determined the required increase in storage capacity for the facility. Previously, it was 64 acre feet that was required. Now it's 96 acre feet. So it's about a 32 acre feet increase in storage required. And this can be accomplished by essentially, instead of digging down, just raising the top of the dam by about 3 feet. We can obtain that additional storage. So the table that you see here is basically a summary of the peak discharges. You can see the undetained flows, and then the column with the detained flows, then the decrease, and the percent decrease. So for instance, at Country Club Drive, the undetained flows right now are 3,084 CFS. After the detention would be about 2,756 CFS, which is a 328 CFS decrease, which is about 10.6%.
Well, can you, in layman's terms, what kind of impact are we talking about?
So these are just the flows. So the next step is to take these flows and run into a hydraulic model, and then we can compare the velocities. So that's what we're gonna share with you now. So this table that you see on the left is a table that shows the channel velocities for the 2-year storm. You see the existing, which is the current channel velocities for the 2-year storm, and then you see the detained velocities. And on the right column, the one that's furthest to the right, that's the difference between one and the other. That's how much the velocities decreased. As you can see, they start with a 0.3 feet per second, 0.4 feet per second at the upstream end, which is where the detention facility is located. Then as you move just downstream of Parkdale Bridge, the difference goes to about 0.1 and then back to about 0.2 and so on.
So what he's doing is cutting those sections along the creek is what he's doing. He's counting all those in the park. That's Parkdale in Oakwood. Right.
If you look at immediately downstream of Country Club Bridge, you see about 0.5 and 0.6 feet per second decrease. And then it kind of goes down from there.
No, this is in Oakwood. That's the bridge at Oakwood.
That's Country Club.
Country Club, yeah, that's Country Club, yeah.
Yeah, that's over there by Harper's, right?
Right.
Okay.
So eventually it goes down, it kind of attenuates down to 0 as you move further and further downstream. So the average reduction, when you take the average of all these numbers, is about 0.2 feet per second. If you look at the velocities, if you remember in the beginning that I show you what's considered an erosive velocity for this type of bank material that you have in Sloan Creek, it's about 4 feet per second. For an unvegetated bank, it could be up to 6 feet per second if the bank is fully vegetated. The velocities that we see here, if you look at the existing and the detained velocities, they range from mostly from about 5 to 7 feet per second. Some of them are a little bit lower, some are higher, but most of them, they fall in that range about 5 to 7 feet per second. So with an average reduction of 0.2 feet per second, we just don't see a lot of like a significant reduction in velocity that could make an impact in stopping erosion. So I went ahead and I decided to see, okay, what would it take to make a real difference where we're gonna see much lower velocities and we're gonna see a noticeable difference in controlling the erosion at Sloan Creek. Based on the velocities that we have right now, which is about 5 to 7 feet per second, if you reduce all those velocities or most of them by 1 foot per second, now you're shifting that from 5 to 7 to 4 to 6. And you're shifting that from a erosive scenario to a non-erosive scenario. So that would be something that would be more significant, a 1 feet per second reduction. In order to accomplish that, we would have to increase our storage in our detention facility. And I went ahead and I calculated what that would have to be, and that comes out to about 295 acre feet. So right now the facility first was 64 acre feet with 100-year, went up to 96 acre feet when you're storing controlling the 2-year storm. In order to attain the 1 foot per second reduction in channel velocity, we would need a detention facility that can store 295 acre feet. So it's about 3 times as large as what we have right now.
295 acre feet. How big is that? I mean, that sounds like a huge.
It's pretty large. I mean, it's doable. I mean, there's.
What's the one at Apple Crossing?
Okay, so this is
A lot larger than that.
We didn't hear that.
We don't have a big enough town.
James. How big was Apple Crossing? 39.5 is Apple Crossing. 39.5 acre feet.
Okay.
So this has to be 8 times bigger than that.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So it sounds like that the solution turns into less development because there's not really a realistic way to do it any other way.
Yeah, it's the issue with these locations, the size that about 100 acre feet, that's pretty much the largest size of a facility that you can put in there. It's just the constraints that we have, the size and the grades that we have to work with. Mm-hmm. So, 300 acre feet, you cannot fit in there. Have to be a site that's much bigger than that to accommodate that.
But what?
Well, and this is the point you're making is that in order to stop erosion, which is natural, we'd have to create something that big.
Yeah, it would have to be that big.
Right. It's not a matter of more or less water or more or less velocity. It is what it is.
Yeah.
The whole point one of the points that he's made is that erosion occurs on every creek, everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
And this is an extreme example of what you'd have to do if you wanted to make it slow it down enough that it was not erosive.
Well, and then how much more does it impact it the more you add to make the velocity go faster? If we wanted to stop the increase where it stayed the way it is right now, what would you have to do that if you didn't build a detention pond like that?
Then basically you'd have to, and that'll be one of the recommendations, to do the downstream assessments to see what's the impact downstream of the future developments would be. For some of those developments, they're far away from Sloan Creek where, they won't affect Sloan Creek. But they would have an impact maybe just immediately downstream of those developments.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as Sloan Creek is concerned, those remaining, I think is about 400 acres or so, or a little bit less than that drain to Sloan Creek. I would say that, especially for the lots, the tracts of land that are really further away from Sloan Creek, doing on-site detention won't benefit Sloan Creek as far as reducing flows or velocities. But they will have a benefit locally, so that's a different thing.
For some reason, I remember from the last report that you could require on-site detention on development, and that was an option that made more sense than doing one big detention where it's 200 acres. Wasn't that the conclusion last time? Is requiring a detention was a solution?
Well, so these would be two different things.
I'm not trying to take you in a direction. I don't know I'm trying to understand what started all this was that people were starting to be concerned, me included, that inserting another development and then another one, just one at a time,
Right.
that we were creating additional pressure. Just so many gallons you can do before it blows, right? And so the concern is that if we don't get a global perspective of what's really going on here, then we could just accidentally just keep approving developments, and then all of a sudden we've destroyed a lot of the natural resources of beautiful creeks and hurt people's homes and flooded their yards or whatever, like what's been going on over in Montecito. And that's what led us to the suggestion, maybe we should get a study done. So, what we're counting on you for is guidance. Ultimately, how much more development can we take on the creek bed, and without doing anything, just giving people 2-acre zoning and they draw a couple of ditches and take it down to the road and we're done, versus what we've talked about, an impact study being required, so that you actually are looking at the impact that this development's going to have on something else. But now we're talking about the even more global picture, is that Sloan Creek has a lot of velocity. And so we're studying, should we make everybody do detention, which is another step, and I thought that was the conclusion. If we didn't want to spend that kind of money to do one great big detention like that, it was to require detention for future development. Was that a conclusion or not? Wasn't that one of the options?
So we're talking about two different things. One, we're talking about locally every piece of land that's available for future development, whether you should require detention or not, just for that development in the areas immediately downstream of it. And our recommendation for that, which you're going to see later, is yes, you should have a downstream assessment to determine the impacts. If there are any negative adverse impacts to the properties downstream, then you have your options for mitigation, which would be providing on-site detention to mimic the existing flows that leave the site, or to improve the infrastructure downstream to be able to handle that additional flow. So that's one thing, and that's one recommendation that we make. The other part of this analysis that we did, looking at Sloan Creek and the effects on stream bank erosion, was to see whether providing on-site detention for all these different undeveloped tracts of land would benefit in any way the channel velocities on Sloan Creek as far as reducing velocities. And the result of that was no, it wouldn't make an impact. So we still recommend.
You mean to do it? You mean to require it on all? I'm sorry, you lost me. You almost had me. So requiring detention on every development wouldn't necessarily help the impact of the erosion we're having on Sloan Creek.
It would not.
Okay, all right. That's what I thought I remembered.
Right.
But I slept.
Yeah, that's.
As far as helping the impact on Sloan Creek, this regional detention facility would help with that, because you see a reduction, but it's a reduction of average of 0.2 feet per second. We're looking more maybe 1 foot per second to really see something that's more noticeable.
Wasn't it the biggest impact was over there at Country Club, over there like by Harper's Landing and down in Montecito? That seemed like there was a jump in that area specifically, but we had said that the road that TxDOT would have to do that bridge
because it narrows there, and that increases the flow.
Yeah, I am remembering something.
So why don't you go through, because you have several more pages, because some of this stuff we're talking about is coming up, I think.
Sure I understand. I have to tie it together where
I get it. I get it. No, that was good.
Since I went into shock when they said a 295 acre.
Yes.
I was immediately looking for another.
Yes.
So this is the conceptual cost estimate for the construction and the design of the facility. The construction cost would be about 6.3 million. 60% of that cost is for hauling off the dirt from the site, which is 380,000 cubic yards. So that's a huge cost. Something to keep in mind is that a lot of times developers, builders, contractors, they're looking for dirt that they need for their sites or filling. So they could come and just haul away some of that dirt for free, basically. So that would cut down the cost of hauling the dirt off. Just something to keep in mind. But overall, the construction cost would be about 6.3 million. The engineering, design, and permitting, a little over 400,000. And then there's a 10% contingency in there, and you're looking at about $7.3 million for constructing the facility.
So this is for the 100-year.
Yeah, this is.
And it was how many acre feet for that one? 90?
64 acre feet.
How much?
64 acre.
64 acre feet. Okay.
Now for the one that includes the 2-year flow, I don't expect the cost to be a whole lot more, and the reason is because the biggest cost increase would be the outlet structure, which is a reinforced concrete structure that, you know, it's costly, but so it would be bigger, would cost more. But because we are essentially not cutting as much, we're going to leave the dam 3 feet higher to accommodate more storage. Then you have less dirt that you're cutting and having to haul away. So that would kind of offset some of that cost. So the overall cost wouldn't be a whole lot more than what you see in there for the 2-year facility.
You said it'd be a whole lot more.
No, it would not.
Not be a lot more. Okay.
And Hamilton, does this include the acquisition cost? You didn't estimate.
No.
Okay.
Right. I was going to say that this all assumes that you've got that you own the property that you need.
Yeah.
And the cost of this is.
Yeah, it's just design and construction. And then with this being a dry pond, that means they have to be maintained, you know, just mowing the grass basically would be your main cost over the years. So basically our conclusion is that there is a reduction in velocities along the channel, which is a good thing. But the reduction is not, we can't say that it's really significant when you're looking at average reduction of 0.2 feet per second. It's not enough to shift from a erosive velocity to a non-erosive velocity. And then with the high initial cost, you know, $7.3 million plus future maintenance costs, we just can't see the benefit of having a facility cost this much to cause a small reduction where we'll see a noticeable difference in controlling erosion. So I wish I had better numbers to give you, that I could say that yes, building this huge facility and spending this money will be worth it because you are going to see a reduction and you know, residents would be happy with that, but unfortunately, that's the numbers that we're getting from running all these models and this analysis. So objectively, just looking at the numbers, I would not recommend the construction of this facility.
Ricardo, Tony, Charlie, any comments on any of this?
Well, I think the takeaway here is that we do need to make sure that we have downstream impact analysis on projects going forward. Obviously, this facility is, in my opinion, not recommended.
So Hamilton.
Hey, I just had a clarifying question on the 2-year channel velocity. Is there a reason we look at 2-year versus 5-year, or if you looked at 5-year, would it be significantly different? Just
it probably wouldn't be much difference. The difference between the 1 and the 2 and the 2 and the 5, I would say would be within 10%. So you wouldn't be seeing much of a difference. It's just that the 1 and 2 year, they're considered the more frequent velocities. So that's what we're targeting.
Got it.
the ones that have a more impact on channel velocity. So we normally, when we do a low flow detention, we start with the 1 year or the 2 year. So that's why we pick the 2 year.
That makes sense.
But so even in a 5-year situation, you're still going to be eroding the bank with this solution.
Yeah, I think with a 5 year, it wouldn't look a whole lot different than the 2 year. You're gonna see maybe more a little bit higher flows, a little less frequent, but not significantly different from the 2 year.
My guess is that velocities will stay somewhat close to the numbers that we've seen as you move up to less frequent storms.
Yes. Generally, the less frequent the storm, like if you start going to the 10 year, 25 year, 50 year, you're going to see that we're going to have actually higher velocities. And the reason is because you have more flows. But those higher flows, when the channel is flowing full, they are not as erosive as the low flow velocities that occur much more often.
Yeah, plus they don't impact as much as the bottom. But yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm just familiar with the banks rising significantly during these large rains. So that was why I had that question. But I appreciate the clarity.
I think James
It doesn't appear like my neighbor, his issue is when the banks go high, not erode low. That's when they're seeing the impact on the trees. Obviously, there's erosion occurring when it's low flow as well. So.
Yeah, and of course all the time. And I think I remember James talking about Sloan Creek when we talked about retrofitting or maybe doing some work along the stream banks there as well. James brought up the annual storm event or a 2-year storm event as opposed to the 100-year because of the frequency.
All right. Well, I think Hamilton may have some suggestions for what we might do in some of these places to help on stream bank erosion.
Yes.
Is it okay if we just cover one more thing?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so now that we're on the track, I'm just there's categories like what we're about to approach, which is repair, like the Bradford's property. How do you repair that where it's hitting that bank so hard and they're taking that corner and there's construction costs there. But from the preemptive strike mindset, would it translate to lower density? Where, let's say, for example, over there on Meandering Way, where we're talking about where we could potentially put that lake. But instead, as people start looking at developing, that's west of this, the property. I guess the water's flowing east, right, toward the lake. So it's picking up velocity, I assume. And if we build more, then we add more pressure, unless we do detention. But you're saying that detention isn't necessarily going to resolve the problem of the velocity. So, so would we want to look at density as an issue of something that we should consider in our planning? Because our, councils in the future are brought plats to approve. And so it's just, we want to do 2-acre lots, and that's kind of all we do is we just get the plat and then we make a decision. And I know we're talking about downstream analysis as one possibility, but there's still the matter of planning. And we have a future land use map. I think generally it's 1.5 acres.
Those are all 2 acres over on Meandering.
Okay, 2 acres.
Everything's 2 acres over
and
there.
So 2 may even be too small. I don't know. I mean, there's obviously the problem with the road. May not be able to take it anyway.
Right.
But that was one of the things that I think we hope to accomplish was to get a general idea of how much more development we should be doing and what kind of expectations we can set for landowners and for developers in this remaining, property that we have without, it pushing us into a direction where we impact the people that are already here. That's what we're trying to avoid.
The density, I mean, the density issue that can still be addressed when you do the drainage study, the downstream impacts for that development. I mean, that's more like I guess the town's planning committee that decides, what kind of density do you want and where. But independent of the densities that we have for any development, you can mitigate for the impacts. And that's where you do the downstream analysis, you do a drainage study, you determine what the impacts are, whether you're putting 2-acre lots or you're putting multifamily townhomes or apartments. You can still mitigate for those the same way as you do for larger lots.
And we would mitigate in the sense of on-site detention.
Yeah, first you have to determine what the impacts are, and then you determine the mitigation measure. Does it make sense to do on-site detention, or can you even improve infrastructure downstream? If you remember on the Molodol tract, we determined that there was an adverse impact.
There was no what?
On the Molodol tract that we did that study.
Right.
The adverse impact was that we're increasing channel velocities downstream to erosive velocities. So the mitigation measure for that was to improve the infrastructure downstream, which is basically putting riprap on the channel, protecting the channel from erosion. So that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Whether you're putting 2-acre lots or, an industrial facility or townhomes, yes, you are going to have an impact, but then you determine how do you mitigate for that impact. And the answer could be on-site detention. It could be improving infrastructure downstream. Sometimes you're limited on what you can do downstream, so you have no option but putting on-site detention. So every case is unique, and you just have to look at that like that.
So how does that work? For example, if I were wanting to develop a commercial property, I would do a feasibility study, and those aren't free. You do a lot of work, a lot of numbers, market analysis, et cetera, et cetera. If we were to require an impact study, would we say to a developer, when you bring us a proposal, we want you to have done an impact study so that you can solidify for us that if we give you the zoning change, that you'll be able, it won't impact us?
You won't be at zoning though.
Huh?
The impact, the downstream analysis wouldn't be at zoning.
Well, but that's my question is that, we keep going around and around with this, but
It's already zoned.
one of the
That's part of
issues
it.
that we have is that what if we say over on a meandering way only should do 5-acre tracts? Let's just say that to not have an impact, we should do 5-acre tracts. Well, we're going to be approached for 2-acre tracts. So then if we give them the zoning and then we get the impact study and they come back and say, you can't do 2-acre tracts, it's going to cause an impact. It's not, you cannot do it without it hurting the creek. It's going to happen. Well, then we've already given them the zoning. So is it?
It already is zoned. That's.
But this is if it's not.
No, but
agricultural.
all of it is. All of it is. I looked.
Okay.
All that land is zoned 2 acres.
Hey, Cynthia.
it's zoned without
Hey,
having-
Cynthia. Hey, Cynthia. So what happens is
No, I
that
see what you're saying, but I mean, it's already zoned. It was done.
It's
10
zoned,
years
but
ago.
it's zoned, and then what if you can't do it though?
hey,
It's
Cynthia.
having an impact.
Go ahead,
Cynthia.
Ricardo.
Yeah. So when the engineer designs or evaluates or put together the downstream analysis, James will review that, and if he finds out that there is significant impact downstream of the subdivision, would say 20 lots at 5 acres each, or 20 lots at 2 acres each, whatever size it is, then James goes back to the developer or the engineer and tell them that you have to do something to mitigate for that impact. And the mitigation can be one of the things that Hamilton already addressed. And if it is detention, then that means the developer has to set aside an area for detention. And if that means instead of 10 2-acre lots, he can only have 7 2-acre lots, that's what he's going to have to do. Otherwise, James will not approve the construction plans, and the developer will not be able to build those 10 2-acre lots, regardless of whether they have the zoning or not. So so there are measures in place already that will preclude them or anybody from developing it unless there is a downstream assessment that shows that there is no impact downstream. I hope that helps.
So Hamilton, is it? Thank you, Ricardo. That's great. Hamilton, if we wanted to rely on the civil engineer that is telling us what the impact is going to be to take some of the liability off of us, the town, would they be able to indemnify the developer and us with that their conclusion is accurate and that it's what the impact is or what the suggestions are going to work?
Yeah, so the developer's civil engineer do the assessment, and then the town, James, would be reviewing it and determine if the assessment was done correctly, or is there any revisions that need to be made, or
Yeah, well, I mean, I see James as a gatekeeper, but I mean, if the civil engineer would be the one indemnifying the town and everybody that this is not going to have an impact if you
Yes.
do this, this, and this.
yeah, he's putting his engineer seal in there. So yes, he's basically saying that the results, he's certifying to those results.
Okay, because I've just been wondering about that.
I didn't hear what you said. Say that again, please.
Yeah, basically the civil engineer, he does a study, he'll put his seal.
Right, with a seal. Okay.
Engineering seal, which is basically certifying that,
That what he's
results
done is
are
correct.
accurate.
Okay,
Yes.
I get you.
Because see, one of the things that I kept running into with Harper's Landing and the 28 acres was what were the specifications that needed to happen specifically. And I was assuming that the civil engineer would draw those specifications and then basically be professionally accountable to them working where they don't create a flood into Harper's Landing. And so, then there was also the question of whether or not the civil engineers that designed the drainage for Harper's Landing and for the school should review those.
Can I address that one for you, Cynthia?
Yes, sir.
There's actually two levels of liability there. One is the contractor, and the second one is the engineer, right? The guy that signs and seals the plans is liable for the accuracy of his design. Everything goes on his plans.
Is he bonded for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's insurance against it. It's liability
So
insurance.
why do we do the final inspection instead of making them do it?
Because
Civil
the town of
engineer.
Fairview is accepting the improvements.
I know, but still, wouldn't it be a wise for us to have the civil engineer that designed the specifications come out and review it and indemnify us versus us taking on the responsibility of that inspection?
I don't know. Then I would sign an indemnification statement. I mean, I'm already covered under the liability of my seal.
Yeah,
That's what it means.
But how do you know that it's been done to your specifications if you don't inspect it?
Well, the town is inspecting it.
I know, but would you want to rely on the town inspecting it whenever you're not the one who built it? You just designed it?
Well, there's a difference there. And that might be, okay, there's a good point there. Because if there is an inspection by the town, then the engineer is relying on inspection by the town. And I don't know how that factors in, and maybe James or Julie can talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I'll just say Harper Landing, for example. when Harper Landing, when the big swell was built, we had them do an as-built survey and submit that to the town. And then we compared the as-built survey to the design survey that Boyd did to initially design the swale. So we did a before and after check, but we required them to have it resurveyed after it was cut. And then we compare the as-builts to the design. So we already do things like that. We require as-built surveys on a number of situations just like that. That's one way we do it. Now we do rely on the civil engineer who designed it. I mean, first of all, they submit the plans to us and we review them. And once we approve the civil plans, we're not taking over the liability of his seal, but we're reviewing the civil engineering plans to see if they meet our standards. And if we say, yeah, they meet our standards, then we approve those to go build it. And then we inspect it along the way. And then if there's any as-built information, any additional surveying information we feel we need, then we ask for it. And then they submit that to us.
Well, when we move to an impact study, though, won't it be different, James, a little bit? Because it's a lot more detailed and.
Well, the impact study, for example, let's say the Tarkenton tract were to come forward, and we're going to be bringing back to you some ordinance recommendations to try to define how we define adverse impact. For example, let's say we define it as anything over 4 feet per second in a vegetative swale. And if you go above that, we'll give you some ordinance language with how we're going to define adverse. Okay, so let's say that you've got some existing swales in Oakwood Estates that are at 3 feet per second. And then post-development, before they build it, post-design, those we're now going to require some velocities off-site. Let me see what your new velocity is going to be. Let's say they come in at 5 or 6 feet per second, and in erosive state. Well, once again, now we know you need to mitigate because your velocities are too high in Oakwood Estates, because in the ordinance format, we've already told you what we consider as adverse. And in every situation will be different. Is it vegetative swale, or is it a clay channel that's eroding already, which may only handle 4 feet per second? Or it may be discharging into a natural channel that's full of trees on either side. There may be a capacity issue, may not be a velocity issue, maybe a capacity. So each situation is going to be different. Maybe a capacity problem, maybe an erosion problem. We'll look at both of those situations. And then the other thing is, the problem we're not going to be able to address when this is what Hamilton's shown. Let's say we're going to develop the Tarkenton tract, and we want to know what effect it has on Montecito Estates. What he's showing you is on the erosive 2-year storm, it's negligible because it's too far away. We can't even build a 69 acre foot pond to have an effect. So we're already seeing information that when Tarkenton and somebody else comes in, we're not going to be looking at the effects of Montecito Estates on the 2-year storm because they're too far away. But we are going to be looking at what you're going to be discharged between that development and Sloan Creek, and perhaps even a portion of Sloan Creek if they're right on the creek, for example. What effect are you having on velocities? And maybe the velocities are 6 and you're going to make them a 6.5. Well, we consider that as adverse. So, but we're going to have to bring it back to you in ordinance format.
I'm really just addressing the procedures. Problem is that when we go deeper in what we require from the builder, when does it happen? And then, how do we enforce it? And who does the final inspection? Because, we're already finding out.
Cynthia, we can't really hear you.
I'm sorry, excuse me. We're already finding out from his study that we're reaching capacity, and that there's not a whole lot more we can increase without having an impact study. So we want to be able to rely on the impact study being accurate and then them standing behind it. And how do you do that? How do you hold them accountable to that? And I mean, anybody can say, well, it's not going to have an impact, or it'll have a small one. You need to add a detention bond. So the builder does what they're told, and then it still has an impact. And so I guess that's the protection I'm looking at, is how much you, as being our engineer, should be shouldering all that. It just seems like a lot to shoulder for you to be the one that approves that.
Who else would do it though?
The engineer.
But the engineer's already done it. And then
I'm talking about him doing the inspection or her
Right.
for the work that was done to make sure that.
In other words, the engineer who designed it
Mm-hmm.
and we approve the design,
Right.
and then they go build it,
Uh-huh.
and then we
And then the civil
verify that
engineer
it
looks
was
at
built correctly. You're saying that the engineer who originally
He
designed
certifies
it
it.
ought to certify it.
Yeah, kind of like a final inspection.
How would that work, Ricardo?
Yeah, normally the engineer does certify in terms of the record drawings, right? It shows how or what was built based on the results of inspection, right? So the town of Fairview has inspectors and inspects the construction process. It is in the town's benefit to make sure that all the infrastructure is built correctly. And then I think the only way for an engineer to really certify that construction has occurred according to the plans and put a seal behind it is to really follow the entire construction process, which typically doesn't happen. And then you also have to survey the facilities after they're built to make sure that they were built exactly in conformance with the plans. That typically doesn't happen.
Well, and Ricardo, I don't know if you remember, but we also talked about that just changing the elevation of the lot. It might not be caught by James because it's an inspection that's done by the building inspector, and so if that slides by, then all of a sudden it could affect the drainage plan.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about, say, a difference in elevation on a pad, on a home, on a pad, we can have a requirement to home builders produce as-built elevations or an as-built map, and maybe we already do have that. I don't know, James, do we?
Yeah, not on low density, on 1 acre subdivisions, we don't have it in ordinance format, but we require it on high density because each corner is so critical on 4 houses to the acre.
Yeah, and on a low density, sometimes we don't even have the pads in, so that's different too.
Well, and I think that's one thing that stood out to me is that if you had a 1.5 acre lot, you didn't even have to have a drainage plan submitted. That it was only required if you had less than 1.5 acres, and that's part of the problem is that the houses are just getting so much bigger.
Yeah, but I think that is being but that's being corrected with the town requiring a downstream analysis.
Yeah, I mean, as long as that happens, but I'm just saying that the existence, we just hardly have anything now. Like if you're building 1.5 or more acres, then you really don't have any requirements.
Right. So that's going to be in the set of ordinances that are submitted that the council will eventually
Y'all shouldn't have gotten rid of me because see, now I want everything to be covered tonight. So I just want to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning so we can go over everything, but you aren't going to let me do that. So, but I'm very excited about the drainage and about us doing this. It's a real special project, and I really appreciate all the effort everybody's put forth to do this. So, but these are things that continually have nagged me. Is I don't want it to be just dumbed down. That okay, we're going to do impact studies, but we don't look at procedures. And once again, I still think that James really shoulders a lot of responsibility, that if he makes one mistake, it could affect a lot of other things, and that the builders are paying for.
Right. But eventually the town has to accept things. So at some point we have to say it's okay.
Yeah, but I just mean that, like Ricardo affirmed, is that the civil engineer is the one who is drawing the plans.
Right. But they don't follow it through.
Yeah. And so then he just ends up with, what do I do now? I take it, I don't take it, I take a chance. So
he's comparing what was designed versus what was built. And that's what James does as opposed to the engineer who designed it.
Yes.
Yeah. Good point.
Now, if there is if there's a problem later, and there's a claim, right? Somebody decides to sue somebody because of a problem, then the engineer has to defend this design. If there is a claim that the design wasn't appropriate.
Suppose though that the design was appropriate, it wasn't built to the design,
then it's contractor's liability. Remember the stadium in Allen?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, or contractor ended up being liable, right?
So in the sense of doing a neighborhood, if there is a civil engineering design, it's done correctly. The builder then builds it out, doesn't do it exactly as the civil engineer says. So what is how do we as a town, are we the ones that sue?
I think typically is, well, if it is a public works project, that will probably the town.
I'm
But
thinking of a neighborhood.
I think it depends on the problem. Like I can see, I've seen homeowners sue,
Yeah.
for different reasons, but yeah. Say a homeowner doesn't agree with the assessment that design is working properly, any homeowner can sue,
Okay.
right? So whether there's merit or not, that'll be decided in court. But
So that is an issue on a neighborhood. Your issue is what if the downstream analysis, and somebody's going to do that.
yeah,
Then the
yeah.
question
So
is how if you do that and it's not done, or suppose it comes out, the results come out differently than what they expected, who's responsible?
Yeah.
yeah. So if it was,
People blame the town all the time. I can't tell you times I've heard.
Oh,
well,
yeah, yeah, I mean,
they
no,
accept.
no, yeah.
We accepted it. We
Wait,
accepted the subdivision.
let's hear what Ricardo says
Yeah,
about that
sorry.
example. No, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. So at some point in time, the town could say, "Look, we've looked at it. Maybe it wasn't built according to plans. Maybe the design wasn't proper. But if we don't find that the town did anything wrong, well, at that point, then you let go, and the homeowner sues the engineer or the construction company, and it happens. Right?
Somebody downstream could sue.
Sure. I mean, if the issue is erosion downstream, and you feel that the downstream analysis wasn't proper, then you sue the guy that signed and sealed the plans, or the company, right, that designed that.
Okay.
And that's what insurance is for, liability insurance as well.
Well, and that's what they post the bond for too. I just get that comment that the town approved it, so therefore we own it. It's ours. It's our problem now.
Well, the other
No,
side is you got to remember, like kind of what we talked about with Bluebird, a lot of this stuff was done and there was no staff. It was done by somebody, the developer decided, I'm going to build a strip of houses right here. And somebody said, okay.
Yeah.
Right. The
really
regulations that we have today were not in place then.
Right.
So how can you hold anybody responsible to a certain level or standard that we hold today for something that was built 20 years ago?
So what's happening right now is like in Countryside, we're going to do Fox Glen, what we're trying to do with Bluebird, we're trying to go in and essentially correct something that was done a long time ago that turned out, it was great when they first built it, but with other impacts and stuff around them. So now
Right.
we're trying to fix that stuff.
Right.
And yeah, it's probably not the best way to do it, but it's all we got. Is
Yeah.
I can try to fix it
And we're trying
But it is also a pretty
and
fine
try to
line.
mitigate
by
future
not
problems.
overbuilding in areas that are creating a strain. And that's where we're hoping
Yeah.
that you'll be able to help us is be careful here, here, and here, because this is going to have more impact on Sloan
Right.
Creek.
Well, and to
Right.
codify
A
that.
lot easier, yeah.
So now if somebody goes into along those properties along Meandering Way, and it is zoned 2 acres, but you go in there and then whenever somebody decides, and I don't expect this anytime soon, but somebody decides we're going to sell our property, somebody's going to develop it, there'll be a developer, somebody come in and one of the requirements we're codify is you got to do a downstream analysis. And if
Correct.
that downstream analysis shows that it's going to have a negative impact on Montecito or Fox Glen or something, then they're going to have to do something in that area to mitigate that problem. And that may, whatever, the options are to do that. Detention is the only one I know, but there's probably other things to do that. And if it's detention, then they may, instead of 2-acre lots, they may have to, they may be able to have 2-acre lots, but they may set some of that land aside for a detention pond or something like, a little bit like well, it's not a good example, but I was going to say Kelly, but that's not a good one.
Mhm.
But anyway, so that what we're trying to do is codify some of that stuff. So it is in place. So it does ongoing. We try to
I just think
avoid
it'd
some of
be
that.
really helpful to set some expectations, like if, like I said, if Hamilton said in these areas, it's going to be a little.
Hey, Cynthia, speak on the mic, please.
Oh, there you go. In some areas, it's going to be tougher because it's closer to the creek or based on the elevation, et cetera. So, maybe those homeowners are just kind of given a heads up that, hey, when you get ready someday, you may not be able to sell your property, assuming you're going to get 20 lots, because it's going to have more impact.
That's not a
and-
reasonable thing to do ahead of time.
Yeah.
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 Well,
You can't do that ahead of time. We can't ask Hamilton that question right now because he certainly doesn't have those answers. So
Yeah.
I understand that
yeah.
we've got to take what they bring us for ordinances
Yeah.
and make that work going forward.
Yeah. It's just, what I've noticed so much, Ken, is that a lot of what comes to the council, there's a lot of work that's done well before it ever comes to us. And then there's a lot of its preconceived ideas that we have, based on our own thought process. But there's also, we're just handed, a packet, and then we vote on these things. And so this study has been helpful, but if we don't draw some conclusions from it, other than we don't want to do a big detention pond because it's 250 acres, that we've spent a lot of time and effort. So
But I think we have, I mean, when we codify these things, that will protect going forward. And then as we go into the older neighborhoods and try to do retrofit kind of stuff,
yeah,
then, those circumstances, surface water at least, is going to be made better.
yeah,
I mean, we can fix some of the things in Fox Glen. I think that's pretty easy. Bluebird, that's a problem. I mean, that's why we did that tonight. I mean, it's going to be a problem figuring out how to do that.
well, that's a,
But
And-
but we have some solutions.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too. When we go about finding solutions, executing these solutions that are really a way to help these homeowners that are in this situation, obviously not under control, and it's nobody's fault, then you're also spending somebody else's taxpayers' money. So we have to be very careful with that too, that we do our due diligence and exercise that very carefully, So that's the other side of the equation too, that I also wrestle with. It's taxpayers' money, right? And we got to be very careful how we do that.
yeah, I've wrestled with that too. What I've found is the biggest concern I have is what we've learned and what we apply.
Yeah.
If we've heard from a homeowner that owns a lake in Fox Glen that if you keep sending more water here, it's going to flood my house, and we don't do something to make sure that we mitigate and keep, make sure that the volume of water coming into Fox Glen does not increase to a point that it floods his house, then we've done our job. But if we just ignore it and then one day it floods his house because we just kept sending more water down there, which is kind of what we're doing. We're putting them in the tributaries and just, Colin Woods over there and Lakewood, and there's going to be more development, and, because there's other raw land over there by Hart Road and on East Stacy.
Right. And I think, the answer is what I said before, is I think we're trying to codify this.
Yeah.
And all those subdivisions were there long before there was a staff here to do any of this stuff.
The new development.
Right. So the new development is
and come in and destroy those neighborhoods.
right. I agree. Which is why we're trying. I mean,
and we may have to send water a different direction. It's just, and those are the decisions that we have.
So go back to, I mean, when you started Moldoff, Harper's Landing, I mean, all that stuff was done because we had a staff. I mean, 4, 5, 6 years ago, that kind of stuff was looked at. I mean, we didn't really make many changes there. And what we're looking at is future development. We're going to codify some additional things to make it even maybe a little bit more stringent. And then we're going to also go into the older neighborhoods where we can and where it makes sense, because we are spending taxpayer dollars.
Absolutely.
But the issue is in, Fox Glen, for instance, we have water that goes over the road. So we have a good reason. That's a town facility that we need to protect. So we have a good reason to go do that.
But for example,
Yeah.
we know that water's the velocity of water, how fast it's coming in, is hitting the bank of the Bradford's property, and that there's some things that they or the town or both or alone and there's programs that other cities do. There may be some ways that we could construct some things to help homeowners, because it's beneficial to everyone that the creek not start being destroyed by velocity. So that's a good example. And then you've got the water coming in from new development into Fox Glen, into that lake. There's specific things, and one of them is what I mentioned earlier, is Kingdom Estates, and the fact that we know that there's water that's going to be going directly into Sloan Creek. We know that we have an underground problem.
But the water going into Sloan Creek is the same water that goes in there today.
I know, but it's going to change the velocity whenever you start building. It's like we're building huge houses in there.
No, I understand.
They're not. This isn't 3-acre lots on the horse streets where
Right.
they built 2,500 square feet.
No, I understand.
And so that's the thing, is that we didn't require impact on that. So we have absolutely no idea how much impact that's going to have on Sloan Creek. So now we know. So do we ask for an impact study? And I don't necessarily mean that they would pay for it. I'm just saying that we've spent all this time and effort. So now we're very aware of what the Senecolas have been through. We know that the Homeowners Association, I believe right now, the covenants are saying that the lots, the homeowners are responsible for their maintenance of their part of the creek. That's not a workable solution. That, we found these things out, and we need to address them because we know that they could be a hazard.
Yeah, but Senecolas was a groundwater issue too. So that was.
It's underground. Yeah. But see, we know that I know that the Blazes right across the creek had hit water. And I heard that there's another lot over there that hit water, but I don't know that firsthand. Whenever they poured the foundation, and they had to go down with piers. And so we know that there's underground water, and we also know that there is a quarry down there. And so, just knowing that underground, the Senecolas have had to replace all their plumbing. They've had to add a commercial drain. They literally had 8 feet of still water underneath the grass. I mean, it's unbelievable what those people have been through. And now they're completely remodeling the kitchen, because whenever that groundwater hit the clay in front of their house, it backed into their kitchen and destroyed, the cabinets and stuff in there, and they're redoing the kitchen. So knowing that, just knowing that's happening, and that right next door on the other side, we're about to build another house that's north, just right there, that could have groundwater that could increase the amount that they're getting again after they just did all this work. This is where we become responsible, is knowing about these things. And it's up to us to make sure that on our watch that we're taking the precautions. And that's really, what's so big about adding a commercial drain instead of just having top surface water? If they hit groundwater, maybe you have a requirement
I think the groundwater issue is one of the things we were going to codify if they're doing something and they find that. I don't remember how that came out. I know Julie has notes on that, but that was one of the things we were going to codify. What happens if you hit that? What do you do?
And then an impact study on the creek at that, where all the water is going to be entering into, the creek from Kingdom Estates. We've got the other side of the creek where there are 4 trees where the roots are completely exposed, and they're going to fall at any time. And then there's also maintenance of the creek. I mean, what are they doing? I would love to know to just garner the knowledge that you guys have in Heritage Ranch, because I know you've been spending.
Spend a lot of money. That's what
They
you
spend
do.
a lot of money,
But
yeah.
you also have
Really, we-
somebody, I've heard you have somebody in your neighborhood that really understands the stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
We've done
And he's quite
$3
good.
million worth of work for
Yeah.
about $750,000 because he's, designed it all.
And he's been involved in actually some of the other conversations. I mean, I know the guy.
Yeah.
You can't stop the erosion. The
Yeah,
erosion,
yeah.
you can't stop it.
All right, so I don't know where you want to go with that,
No,
other than
that's really
other than
good.
we've been through this. We're
Right.
going to codify things. That is-
where I was talking
right.
specifically is whether we should consider doing an impact study on Sloan Creek in Kingdom Estates. And that, I know that's all up to all of us to decide that. It's just that it really has been weighing on my mind that there's several symptoms that are telling me that when y'all approved Kingdom Estates, you didn't know, but now through these studies, we know that through all the input we've had from all the citizens. And I'm just worried that if we just leave it at that and just take our chances that we may.
Well, even if we did one and we paid for it, we can't enforce it because it's already been
done.
It's already been approved. I mean, we can't. That's one of the things I asked early on. I said, whatever we do ordinance wise is only going to apply to development going forward.
But James, if you found out that it was going to have a negative impact and that an alteration of the drainage plan needed to be done, is he correct that you wouldn't have the authority to say, hey, we're going to need more?
We couldn't require the developer to provide more. The town could spend the money to do additional work. But once we've approved a subdivision and accepted it,
Well, I'm talking about the lots aren't all built on yet.
the subdivision is
Doesn't matter.
approved. That's the driving factor is
The
the
drainage
subdivision.
and the roads and the water system, that's already been approved.
All
and
that
accepted
size
as
for the many lots. And we just took one away tonight, so that was a good thing.
And I talked to Cardinal Strategies. In a nutshell, what happened underneath Senecola's house was they have a seam of Houston black clay and a separate clay right under their house. There's two different soil types. Groundwater, and this has nothing to do with the quarry. Groundwater comes through a layer of clay that it travels better than Houston black. When it ran up against the Houston black, the groundwater chased that Houston black clay right underneath their house. I talked to Cardinal Strategies and they said that's exactly what it was. And I showed you the soils map.
Underneath the property.
Yeah, they have two different soils types coming together right underneath their slab.
What about
That's the
what
problem.
about Kingdom Estate?
Yeah.
Do they have that over there?
Well, Kingdom Estate, the lots on Kingdom Estates, like that's when I showed you all those different types of soils maps we have in Fairview. I mean, and it gets down to an individual lot. In other words, the lot next to the Senecolas may not have that same seam of two different soils types.
So how do you find out whether they have that or not?
Yeah, you got to pull a soils map and look at a seam whether
He showed us
types of
those.
soils come together.
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
then just because you have two different soils types doesn't mean you've got a problem. In their case, you're close to Sloan Creek, you're downhill, and the groundwater hit that seam and chased the Houston black right underneath their house. That's in a nutshell what's going on. And the soils map tells it. But so what we were talked about doing is from a codification standpoint is let's make the home builder at least analyze that and turn that into us so we can review it. Hey, you did take soils and groundwater into account. So at least they have to do some due diligence, and then their engineer will have to certify that the foundation of this slab was good for the subsurface water that's sitting on this lot. We don't currently require that, but we can. And that's something we can put back on them to turn into us.
So there's not anything we could do in Kingdom Estates if we found out that the drainage was inadequate.
Oh, the drainage in Kingdom Estates is fine. That's not what was wrong with the Senecola's house.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm
Okay.
talking about that if we did an impact study and found out that the impact to Sloan Creek was a lot greater than.
Oh, like after the fact,
because
you
we
mean?
didn't do an impact study.
Yeah, after the
Are you
fact.
saying that there's nothing you could do?
Yeah, we've already approved the density. We've already approved the plat. We've gone through the plat. So yeah, at this point, and then the streets and the drainage were put in according to the drawings. And so at this point, yeah, we can, best thing we can do is take the next subdivision coming forward.
Can I ask what next we're going to have Hamilton do so that we can be respectful of his time and let him do it?
We were going to talk about the potential plantings and stuff along the creek, if you want to go over that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, we haven't even finished its presentation yet.
Yeah, that's what it is. The bioengineering erosion control.
Right.
Yeah, so we're going to let Hamilton go ahead and finish that.
Okay, so let's talk about bioengineering. So basically, you have your hard armoring. That's the preferred way of controlling erosion when you have really high velocities and severely eroded banks. But we covered that I think the 2 times ago when I was here, and that can be very, very expensive. We're talking about retaining walls and all of that. Another method, which is, I would say, is an alternative, but is not, doesn't provide the same level of service, would be bioengineering, which is basically using organic engineered materials in conjunction with grasses and things like that to protect the stream bank and to protect the toe of the banks. So some of the advantages is that they are a lot cheaper and more environmentally friendly than hard armoring. They require less construction equipment, sometimes no construction equipment at all. There is minimal to little disturbance to the stream bank. They can be installed sometimes even by the residents if they can acquire the right materials. They can just install that on their own, and I've seen that happening in other parts of the Metroplex where they had the natural streams that were eroding. They were a lot smaller than Sloan Creek, but it was a similar situation. The natural stream was eroding, and the HOA, the residents in a certain area, they went there and they gathered these materials and they implemented these bioengineering solutions, and it worked out well for them. They are generally effective in preventing erosion in small streams with low to moderate channel velocities. Sloan Creek doesn't exactly fit that description. It's not a small stream. I would say it's more like a medium-sized stream. The velocities are not extremely high, but they're more on the high side. However, I think there would be a benefit in applying these bioengineering methods. In some areas, you can probably completely address erosion where the velocities are not as great. In other areas where you see really high velocities and severe erosion, I don't think bioengineering is going to resolve the situation, but it could help to at least delay the erosion or protect against maybe smaller storms with smaller velocities and keeping from getting worse and worse at a faster rate. Some of the disadvantages, of course, is they cannot withstand very high velocities. You're talking about maybe 6-7 feet per second. Beyond that, you're going to see erosion. Doesn't matter which stream bank it is. They also require, because you're dealing with organic live materials, they require a lot of watering, especially in the first few weeks to establish the vegetation, establish the grass. And then from there, once the grass is established, usually it kind of takes care of itself and there's not much maintenance involved after that. So I picked a few, I think the ones that will be most applicable to Sloan Creek, some of bioengineering techniques. You see on the screen, there's vaccines, and the other are live stakes. They're essentially almost the same thing. These are stakes about 3 to 4 feet in length. They're live stakes that you literally hammer them into the ground, leave the top portion exposed where they have some bushes and things like that kind of protect the surface of the bank. The live stakes underground, they have a root system that spreads out. It's kind of a dense root system that absorbs the moisture of the soil. And what that does is that it strengthens the soil, becomes a more stable bank. So you're providing bank stability and surface protection when you do that. And this is something that, you can acquire these materials probably from a nursery or a landscape company, landscape supplier. It's something that even the residents, they could go in and do that on their own. Something that doesn't require any special equipment. It's not expensive. It just takes a little bit of work to basically get the material, place it, and something that could be done relatively cheaply and provide some level of bank erosion control.
What kind of slope can you have to pull that off? That's less than 1-to-1 there, isn't it?
So there are different applications with different limits. This one, I believe is a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 slope maximum. So if it's steeper than that, then this wouldn't apply. But then there's some other things that you could put in there instead of this. So if you're talking about a very vertical bank, this may not be applicable.
All right.
And you see both. If you walk along Sloan Creek, you're going to see some areas that are very vertical, other areas are more sloped. So
what in the vertical ones, what would you do? Because that's where we had the most problems.
So on the vertical, of course, the hard armor would be the main alternative.
Right.
All the stuff we already talked about. Oh,
What's that?
all the stuff we already talked about, the concrete block.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking if there would be some kind of a
you'd have
plant material.
Something that could, I would say probably some type of native grasses, they could grow on a more vertical type of bank.
I don't know. They would just stand the higher velocities, though.
Yeah, they would extend maybe 4 to 6 feet per second. That's kind of the limit of the vegetated channel. So that's the limitations of bioengineering, is that you're not going to design something that's going to really withstand very high velocities on a large stream.
What'd you say about up to 6? Is that what you?
Yeah, usually about up to 6 feet per second. So it does provide some level of erosion control, but it's not going to be, as I mentioned before, it's not going to be your permanent fix for erosion.
Yeah, this could be a scenario where it works for a number of years, and then you start having different weather patterns, and suddenly you see erosion again.
Mm.
Yes.
These stakes that you can, I'm reading what you had there, the live fascinis. Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you couldn't hammer those into a vertical slope? And then whatever's growing in there just then
I think
grows.
these ones, the live vaccines and the live stakes, they have a limit on the slope. I think it has to be like a 1-to-1 slope maximum. So those wouldn't be applicable for a vertical slope.
I think that if I can read the last part over there on the right screen, it says practice not applicable for slopes greater than 2-to-1. They recommend 3-to-1. Is that what it says?
Yeah, 3-to-1. Yeah, that's for the live stakes.
Yeah, so
Oh, there it is. Okay.
that'd go way back into the yard.
So
Yeah, so this wouldn't apply for, something that's vertical or nearly vertical.
Okay.
So let's assume that we didn't want to do any of it because it was going to be really expensive, and so we just said, let's just leave it alone, just let it do what it does. What would ultimately be would that just affect the Bradfords? Like where the water's coming in and hitting their bank, would that just affect them, or would that eventually affect?
Might be the
The
next
rest
one
of the
down the line where it goes. Remember how it took the little wiggles and it made the big wiggles? So it might.
Yeah.
Next place it takes a right turn might
Yeah, does it eventually stop affecting that bank and then it proceeds on to start affecting something else, or is it
It
in the
could
town's
just,
best interest to mitigate it for the long run? Kind of like Heritage Ranch over there.
Yeah,
I
so
don't see it stopping.
it kind of depends on every condition, but you could see that it just, that bend that's being eroded just gets deeper and deeper. It could, sometimes you see starting a parallel channel where it creates like an island and then creates a channel, and then the channel joins the main channel downstream again. You see a lot of that in like rural streams. So yeah, if you leave it without any protection at all, I mean, it's just, the tendency is just to get worse and worse.
Yeah, and that's what I'm concerned about is how does that ultimately impact us as a town? And, by just ignoring it or saying, well, it's y'all's problem, it's your property, it's hurting your lot, versus, gosh, this is something that we need to do. We need to take care of it. What's the deal? Can you give us some input?
Yeah, so that's part of the input right here is bioengineering solutions, retaining walls. That's essentially how you
So you
protect
think
the stream
this
bed.
would work in that situation?
So like I mentioned before, for higher channel velocities, larger streams, the real solution is structural measures.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, those are
that-
cost prohibitive. I think for a lot of the residents, that's very understandable.
Mhm.
This would not be the recommended solution on this type of stream and velocity that we see here, but it's certainly something that would help. I cannot say you're going to put this and forget about it. You're never going to have erosion again. That's not going to be the case. And also it depends on the area of the stream. If it's there are certain areas of the stream where the velocities are lower, the erosion is moderate. In those areas, I think these methods would probably work fine.
Some of the places I'm thinking like where this might work, like the Farkas's backyard, because it's kind of fallen off and then there's kind of like a, steps down to there. This probably would work really, really well to mitigate any type of erosion they're going to have going forward. But for the Bradfords,
Theirs is really vertical.
theirs is really vertical, and that's when you get into structural kind of things where it's really expensive.
Well, and sometimes it's just the thing you do. I mean, it's a lot of money, but that's just what you do because you've got all these people living on the creek, starting with where you are, and even up in the commercial district, and it's just
Right.
we have a lot.
But
That creek is a big asset for us. I'm not proposing it, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying. I think sometimes I get exasperated by the number, and then I just move away. It's like, no, we're not doing
Right.
that. But is it something that we should seriously consider?
But I mean, like in the creek up by where I live, I mean, we've looked at that. There's a really sharp turn in there.
Yeah.
And it was $700,000. I mean, there's nobody going to approve that. I mean, even the neighborhood wouldn't want you to do that. It's just incredibly expensive to do some of this stuff. And some of it's as James keeps saying, and Hamilton, the natural process. If you live along the creek, that's part of what you get.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out a way to mitigate it with plants,
Yeah.
willow trees, bamboo, that kind of
Would
stuff.
this work on Sloan Creek?
No, not at all. It is completely vertical. It's worse than Bradford's.
But see, that's the thing is that to have natural beauty
Right.
and to basically be a town that has major creeks, and then to say that we're not going to spend the money.
But if you spend the money to do what we need to do, which would be lining it with concrete or rocks or something, then we take away the beauty, the natural beauty.
Well, you
I mean,
do,
that's part of the problem.
yeah, you do.
And you end up with
Just have to agree.
looking like Los Angeles with, everything is concrete. I mean, it's a difficult circumstance and trying to figure it out. And when it's vertical, there's no good answers.
Yeah.
Other than do what Heritage Ranch did. And then
I
you,
sympathize with them
yeah.
tremendously. But it's not a taxpayer solution.
Yeah.
It's not a taxpayer money solution.
Well, what if it's so beyond what they can afford and it doesn't make sense but it's eventually going to destroy the creek? I
But-
don't know if that's what I'm trying to find out. I've never,
But it won't
It
destroy
won't
the creek.
destroy the creek. The creek's going to
The
be
creek
there.
just goes a different way. It just, it puts, I remember James talked about on the outside, it puts stuff and takes it away from the inside and they're, who knows what it'll change in 10 years. And some of the things we're talking about is, I mean, they could have a significant change in 1 year, or they may not have a change for 20 years. And
We've had situations at Heritage Ranch where the stream erosion was threatening a green, and the cost of replacing a green was enough that you said, hey, it makes financial sense to put in a retaining wall so that you're protecting that investment. And I think there may very well be homeowners in Fairview that need to make a similar decision. If their house is being threatened, they may need to consider doing something that's more than just planting some plants.
so let me just say, I mean, we could talk about that for a long time and we don't have an answer.
Is this the end?
I would just say that we are very
this the
sensitive,
end?
highly
Okay.
sensitized to it. We've all probably walked down there and looked at it, and as something comes along or Hamilton's available, we talked about putting some stuff on the website. I mean, this is the kind of thing we ought to put on the website right here, and put some. Yeah, well, I mean, this is a good thing. There's specific plants it mentions in here, and some of the stuff I've never heard of, doing it with the Fassinis. That's kind of cool. So I'm just gonna try to close this part and let Hamilton go. Hamilton, is there anything else you need to tell us?
I just have a few more slides.
Okay, well, I mean, you have different ways of doing this. Yeah, go ahead.
And I just wanted to mention these particular methods. These are probably some of the most common bioengineering methods.
Hamilton, can you speak a little closer to the mic, please?
Yes. So these methods were developed based on research by the USDA, NRCS, which is the National Resources Conservation Service. So they have been used for a number of years. So they are like proven methods, not just something that somebody came up with and let's put some vegetation in there and see if that works. That's not the case. These are methods developed by NRCS. They are used very frequently. They have been used for a number of years. So it's something that's proven that if you implement these methods in there, of course, like I said before, every section of the stream is a little different, but you are going to see a benefit. It may not be the solution to the Bradford's Bend, but it may be the solution for other areas, which I saw when I was walking along the creek, where you could see there was some erosion developing, but still there's a little bit of vegetation left, which is telling me that there used to be more vegetation in there. Now that's getting eroded. But if you go and implement something like this in that area, I would say with a good level of confidence that it would take care of that particular spot. In other areas, the solution is just going to have to be some kind of a hard armoring. But there's definitely a benefit in applying these methods, which are just a fraction of the cost of structural measures.
So why don't you go to your final slide?
Which one?
Just the final slide where you had the recommendations.
Okay. Okay. I can talk this later, I guess.
Yeah, all those things. That's the kind of stuff we need to put on the website,
Okay.
because it's
Yeah.
very specific about where you use which plants and the names of the plants and stuff. That was good.
Yeah, that will be this one.
Right.
So you can see the soil bioengineering methods on the top part of that page, and then there is a bunch of methods in there. I think I included 4 or 5 of those in detail, and they show what each method is applicable for. Is it for just protecting the stream bank? Is it for protecting the toll, which is also very important and critical? Some of them are for both. So like for instance, the coconut fiber roll, those are 12-inch diameter coconut fiber rolls that you can purchase from a a landscape supplier. They can be used to protect the toe of the slope. And the way you do that, you dig, just bury them maybe 3 or 4 inches into the stream bed, and you hold them. They're going to be held with stakes, wood stakes. Essentially, they're creating a toe to protect the toe of the bank, the water to erode in the toe. So that's the beginning of providing some bank stability by protecting the toe from eroding. From there on, you can put other things like, there's all types of native grasses, or you can put these live vaccines and live stakes, depending on the inclination of the bank. So using a combination of some of these, you can protect the toe and the slope of the bank, assuming that the slope is not vertical, So that's a very good resource there to, and this kind of plant materials, they should be available like from a landscape or nursery or supplier like that, and something that's not as nearly as expensive as structural measures.
Okay.
And then on this slide, this is just about grasses. If anything, the simplest thing they could do that would help with erosion on the stream bank is just planting grass in there. And there are some very specific types of grasses that are very resistant to erosion, especially native grasses, because they won't require maintenance. We have used the switchgrass in several projects in the past, and it has done very well. If you're familiar with switchgrass, it grows about 3 to 4 feet in height. It's very dense on the surface. Under the surface is even better because it's got a very deep and strong and dense root system. So it provides a lot of bank stability. And it's a very effective grass that can withstand erosion. Again, we're talking about velocities up to about 6 feet per second. So it's something that could definitely provide a lot of benefit. If they can't do anything else, just planting switchgrass on the bank, that's going to provide some benefit. And because of the dense root system, it even helps to protect the toe of the stream bank. So that would something I would definitely recommend that would be relatively cheap and easy to do. Of course, it requires watering. You have to plant a certain time of the year, fall or spring, and then water until that vegetation is established. Once the vegetation is established and that grows, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to maintain, you don't have to mow it, so it's maintenance free. And you can see on the column on the right, there are the application rates in there. So if you ever did any fertilizing on your lawn, it's how easy it is. You just buy a bag and set your whatever you call the thing that disperses the seeds, and that rate, and then allow the grass to grow in there. So this would be the most economical method of all of them, and it would be helpful. It's not going to be your permanent solution, but just planting switchgrass on the stream banks, you're going to see some benefit from that.
Okay.
Ideally, if you can use some of the other bioengineering methods like the coconut log in combination maybe with switchgrass, that will be even better, And of course, if you have the money, then I would go with a structural retaining wall. That would completely stop the erosion.
And those were about 300, right? Isn't that what you said? About how much were they? The walls, they were several $100,000, weren't they?
Yeah, they're gonna go in the hundreds of thousands. Yep. Now there's another thing that you could do that we also have done in projects like this, where you do a certain section hard armoring towards the bottom of the stream. The bottom of the stream near the toe, that's where you see the higher velocity, the high shear stress that causes the erosion. So that area is the area they want to protect really well. One way to save money on a retaining wall is to do some hard armoring towards the bottom of the stream, let's say the first 4 or 5 feet, where you see those high velocities, high shear stresses. And then from there on, if you can kind of slope the bank, even like a 1-to-1 slope, and then have some of the bioengineering, like switchgrass or combination of switchgrass with a turf reinforcement mat, which is it's basically a plastic grid that's very, very strong, but it's a lot cheaper than concrete or hard armoring. So if you do a combination like that, hard armoring at the bottom, bioengineering at the upper half of the stream bank, that could save you a good chunk of money and still have the level of protection that should stop erosion, basically.
Okay. Well, this is good stuff. We can put this on the website then.
And I can show you, I can even send you some photos of projects, that show that. So just kind of give you a visual, that's what's going to look like. Retaining wall here with a slope, the switchgrass. And we have done projects many years ago. They're still holding very well. So it's definitely a good way to combine both. So you're not spending as much money, but still getting the level of protection that's going to stop the erosion.
Okay. All right, then you had some final recommendations for us.
Yes. So after all these studies, basically, I think we realized that the importance of requiring a downstream assessment for all the future developments, I think that's critical. If anything, we cannot go back in time and fix the things that, that happened in the past. However, we can, at least from now on, prevent things from getting any worse. And having these requirements, for a downstream assessment to determine the impacts of any future development and providing mitigation, that would certainly be very, very beneficial. So we would recommend that. For stream bank erosion, based on our 2-year velocity assessment with the regional detention, I can comfortably recommend that solution just because the cost is extremely high, and the benefit that you get from that, you're not really going to see a noticeable decrease in erosion with an average velocity decrease of 0.2 feet per second. So our primary recommendation still go with the structural measure. If that option is not viable or is cost prohibitive, then using the bioengineering methods or simply planting some native grasses, that would certainly help with delaying erosion. In some cases, it would probably completely stop the erosion, just those methods on their own. And then finally, as far as maintaining the stream, in talking to residents, I spoke to several of them that own the properties backing up to Sloan Creek, and they are already doing their share in maintaining their properties, preventing organic material, debris, and tree limbs and things like that from falling to the creek. Others not so much. So I think it would be important to have some type of a neighborhood meeting with these residents, just to kind of make them aware of the importance of maintaining the yards, preventing material from getting to the creek. What happens is every creek has transport sediment, bank material, rocks, and things like that. If you start obstructing the flow with tree limbs or dead trees in the middle of the stream, the sediment just settles and stays there. Over time, over the years, you're basically building up the sediment. You're losing your capacity to convey flow in the creek. So we want to let the stream does what it's naturally supposed to do, which is transport material downstream. So the way to do that is just basically keeping the stream clean and unobstructed. And since the residents own basically their lots usually go to the middle of the stream, then essentially they're in a way responsible for doing that maintenance, not just on their yards, but also, in how it impacts their neighbors downstream and upstream. So, and like I said before, several residents I spoke to, they already do that. Others maybe not so much. So it'll be helpful maybe to have a neighborhood meeting where you kind of bring everybody on the same page and explain the situation. It is going to help to, not reduce flooding, at least making flooding from getting worse if you're unobstructing the creek and taking all the trees and limbs and bad stuff out and just allowing the stream to flow naturally. So those are our recommendations. If you all have any questions, any other questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Well, I'll tell you, we've learned a lot over the past months that we've been working on this. So I think we are all very highly sensitized to drainage issues, to the issue of in Sloan Creek erosion. I don't know exactly how to deal with that one yet, but we're aware and we'll be sensitized to that. Some of this stuff, like I said, the bioengineering kind of things, we can put that on the website so people can see. If you have any pictures we can add to that might help people to visualize what that looks like, to see if there's some things that can be done to help those that have that erosion issue right now. And then going forward, we will continue with the codification of drainage issues that we need to do, and looking at downstream assessment be one of the things that we're adding to our list of things that have to be done now that we understand what that is. So I don't know. You ready to go on to the next topic? Or
I think the only thing that I just thought I'd ask him is,
while you're sitting there freezing,
to clarify that if the bank, I mean the creek bed is maintained where you're not having a big buildup of sediment, etc., that helps.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because that's one thing that I hadn't really thought about is, that if the more sediment
Get a little closer.
the higher the level of water, and then it's hitting the bank
in
at
a different
higher
place.
spot.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Yep.
that's another possible solution
Yeah.
that we should add to our tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Something that's often neglected because it's something that we just don't see. We don't see small sediment and small rocks moving to the stream, but every time it rains, that happens. The stream transports material.
Right.
Eventually goes to Wilson Creek, and then I don't know where it ends, but it's going to end up somewhere at a low spot somewhere. So
It fills in Lake Levon is what it does.
yeah.
And then you have to go dredge that.
Then I have to dredge that every so many years. So in that is a significant amount. There are sediment transport analysis that can be done where you estimate the amount of sediment that's transported along a stream. If you wanted to quantify that to see, okay, over 1 year or 5 years, how much sediment is moving along that stream, and you can come up with so many cubic yards of sediment, and now you add an obstruction here, how much of that sediment is being prevented from moving downstream, and that starts to take some of your conveyance in the channel. All of a sudden you're losing that air in the channel, losing capacity, and contributing to more flooding. So,
Okay.
it's
That's a
definitely
good thought.
something that
I don't think we need
would
to.
be
I'd rather have a
beneficial
crew.
to have the residents, to be aware of that and do their own part in maintaining their yards and
Mm-hmm.
preventing that from falling to the streams.
Okay. Does anybody have any final questions for Hamilton before we let him go home tonight? Hamilton, thank you.
Thanks for all the good information.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thanks for listening.
Well, nice to get to know you, and I'm guessing we'll probably see you again. This will not be the last time we visit, so that's a good thing.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to do this work for the town of Fairview.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish we had better results, more positive results
Hey.
to show, but
The numbers are the numbers, you know?
we have to go by science and
Yep.
the methods that we know they're acceptable, and that's what it is. But hopefully I've provided you a lot of information that can be useful for changing the ordinance and helping the residents implement some of those bioengineering methods and things like that.
You did.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Hamilton. Thank you so much, really. All right. I'm going to move on to the next topic.
Thank you, Hamilton.
Next topic is discuss COVID-19 activities and actions. I don't think anything's changed from last meeting.
Well, actually, there has been a change. We now have two
yes, that.
positive employee COVID cases. So I knew it was going to happen at some point, and it has happened. Not that we're necessarily changing what we've been doing. We're still continuing to do the things that we need to do to keep our employees safe.
Are y'all hearing Julie? Just to check.
Everybody hearing me?
Yes. And how are they doing, Julie?
They are fine. At this point, the symptoms are mild, but they're newly diagnosed. So hopefully that's what happens. That's hopefully where it stays.
Okay.
We certainly anticipate
Having them isolate for a while.
Oh yeah, they're not here. We have a policy in place in terms of how many days they have to stay home, how many tests they have to take, negative tests in order to come back. We have a whole set of procedures that are in place for our employees. So yeah, absolutely, they are at home.
Hey, Julie, did you have to quarantine anyone else who's come in close contact with them?
We haven't at this point. Again, we've had some pretty solid protections in place for employees as it was. The two employees that did become positive, they worked together in the nature of their job, but we protected them from other employees. So we are a small organization. So as we have these folks that are diagnosed positive, we're going to have some impacts in terms of our ability to have the personnel necessary to continue to meet services. So we are working to make sure that is in place.
Were they exposed?
And Julie, where's the town getting their testing done?
It's we have an arrangement with a company that is actually doing testing for the city of Plano and the city of Frisco. They have agreed to do all of our testing. They were actually doing their public safety testing for those larger cities. They're doing all of our testing. Employees have the choice. There are a lot of sites now that are available for testing, so they don't have to go to those locations. They can choose to go to another location. Some have chosen to go to the provider we've identified. Some of them have gone to other places. So we will keep you all posted. Again, we anticipated this was going to happen. We just didn't know when, but it has now happened.
It's took 8 months.
Yeah.
Before it actually hit us.
Yeah.
We've been lucky.
We understand the city of Allen's had quite a few positive cases within their employee ranks.
Just recently, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
The case levels are kicking back up. Hospitalization is increasing. So we are redoubling and making sure that all of our employees are following all of our protocols just to make sure that we stay safe. I think it's going to be really important over the next couple of months to ensure that protocol is followed and we do the best that we can to keep our employees as healthy as we can.
Okay, moving on. We have discussed to take any action, disaster declaration.
That's on as you all have requested.
I haven't taken any action.
No,
I don't
but
intend to.
given the increase in cases, I would certainly not encourage you to do anything other than what we've got in place today.
And keep that open just so we can respond quickly.
Yeah, well, we'll have it on here every month. We'll just keep that on there.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we have remote actions related to remote access to meetings and minute recordings and take any necessary. Roland, I think that was yours.
Yeah. So I actually wanted, Bill Baxter to come in and kind of tell us what's
think-
possible.
Adam, is Bill available?
Hey,
Great.
Bill, you there?
Well, he was on there. So
Uh-oh.
he's disappeared.
Oops.
Let me, might go to the next item. Let me see if I can find him.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, he's ready to talk.
Okay, there he is.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, guys. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So if you just want to bookmark the audio, we can do that through YouTube. That's more of a mom and pop solution. If you want a turnkey solution, then I would recommend Swagit, which is a kind of almost a production company, and a lot of the local governments use it around here. It's pretty expensive at $20,000 for install, and then about $10,000 to $12,000 a year for maintenance and encoding and bookmarking all the audio and video and getting it up on a custom website where you can see all of the agenda items and click on that and see the video and the audio at the same time.
What's it called? Swagit?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we looked at a couple of years ago when this item was brought forward. It's about $20,000 to acquire it, and then there's maintenance cost. Bill, I don't remember now what the annual maintenance cost. About $10,000, it seems like.
About 10 to 12,000. They go off the amount of meetings you have. So if you have one council meeting and one P&Z meeting, then that would be 2 meetings per month. And that's about $10,000 a year. And what they do is they'll do all of the encoding and all of the bookmarking of the audio and the video and put it on their website. It's a turnkey solution. It's an excellent solution.
Is there anything that's more reasonable? I mean, again, if you're in Plano, I would say Swag would be the way to go. But since we're Fairview, I mean, there's other tools out there for video that allow you to bookmark it. I mean, I can bookmark it in Final Cut. I mean, that's just one way to do it. But
we did research some simpler version of different types of software, but none of them seem to have all the features that the town would need. I can go back and do some additional research, but I don't think it'll be very promising. I'll definitely go back and do.
What other features are you thinking, Bill?
Well, I think there's a lot of work in going back and watching the video and watching the audio and doing all of that bookmarking and tagging. In fact, that's why it costs $10,000 to $12,000 a year for Swagit to do it, because they've got someone that as soon as the meetings start, then they go start listening to that video and audio and bookmarking it and getting ready to go, so it can be back there on the website, within a couple of hours right after the meeting. And if others, simpler solutions aren't going to have, that feature, and the time-consuming effort by Tenitris or someone else that do all that work is pretty significant. Now, of course, YouTube, if we did a real simple solution like just for audio and YouTube, then Tenitris is already tagging, or writing down when, the timestamp of when we move from agenda item to agenda item.
Exactly.
So we can do that in YouTube and publish it on YouTube, but then we have to cut it up into sections for each agenda item, put that link on the website, so if someone wants to click on that and listen to that agenda item, they can do that from our website. And that's probably the basic version.
Yeah, I mean, again, as long as Tenitris or whoever knows when the time is, so an hour 10 minutes into it, we're on agenda item 2. An hour 30 minutes, we're on agenda item 3.
Yeah,
I mean, there's public domain tools allow you to cut, just add those marks, those bookmarks on audio for free, quite literally. I can gladly share them with you.
Why don't you do that? That might be the best if you got ideas.
Well, I mean, again, those are for audio. For video, I mean, Final Cut will do it. I mean, and that's, you know, a few $100s, and you can have Final Cut
I'm
to
thinking
do the
my
video.
video, other than what we show presentations, is there anything beyond? I mean, they don't need to look at us, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, it's any video. However you record it, you can put bookmarks in it just for next to nothing. So, I mean, again, if you want a turnkey solution, I bet it does cost $20,000. But if you want just a quick and dirty where people can get to the right section and we're already having the meeting and all you have to do is write down the time and then come in and go right to that time and click a button, go to the next one, click a button, and then publish it. I don't know why you'd need to spend $20,000.
I'll go ahead and look at Final Cut, and we'll grab, you know, our Zoom videos and our audio that we have, and run through a test scenario and see what we can come up with.
And remind me, just if you want to do the pure audio, I can't remember what the name of the software is, but it's public. You don't have to pay for it. You just download it, and then you can slice and dice any audio you want. Add bookmarks, speed up sections, slow down sections, whatever you want for free.
All right.
And Bill, let's find out how much time it takes to do that.
Yeah, definitely will.
Yeah, because there's time that Tanitzers will put in to get that done as well.
Yeah. Plus, you have to, you know, we already store, you know, Zoom or Ring Central stores our meetings right now. Our audio, we already store. So I don't think that would be such an issue. It's just the storage.
We're not publishing the Ring, the recordings, the Ring info though right now, are we?
That's correct. We are not.
Why wouldn't we do that?
You'd be surprised how much you learn.
Oh,
I think that's a question for Julie.
What would we publish, I guess?
Just a link to the meeting, and if it's recorded, then anybody can watch it.
Well, just watching, it's not real exciting or real informative.
I know. Well, you know, again, it's not up to me, but I know a lot of people. I just ask your Councilwoman Brugge how many recordings she's listened to. So if you want to go, Charlie, tell the town that, you know,
Listen,
it's boring.
She said, listen, not watch.
Well, no, I'm just
listen
saying
or
that,
watch?
watching the meeting isn't very informative. You have to listen to the
You gotta get a
content.
laugh, girl. You gotta get a laugh.
It took a full trip to Austin.
Well, if all you have to do is publish a link, if it's already recorded on Ring Central. Oh, you guys don't have it publishing? I mean, I don't know.
We can't hear the discussion, guys.
Well, why don't we do this, since there's apparently some interest in maybe one or the other. We'll look at what the options are for video or audio.
Yeah, if you have some ideas, write them down.
Well, those depends how you publish your data. I mean, the audio, it's, you know, if you want to keep publishing the audio, at least bookmark that. If you want to publish the Ring Central, then it's already automated. It's not bookmarked, but it's automated. All you have to do is publish a link and upload the files.
Okay.
And if you're going to do video from the camera, however that's done, then it's something different. So it just depends what you want to do.
Okay. Seems to me, if we're going to do anything, it makes sense to do. I don't know what the video would show, but video. Have the voice at least, because that's what
audio. We'll look at the various options and see what there might be and bring it back to the next meeting or a subsequent meeting.
Okay, let's move on. We have next one is discuss tracking of staff actions and take any necessary action. What is that about?
Well, this is something I also asked for. This is more of just like, you know, we have an action item. I'd like to see almost like an action register that's carried from meeting to meeting where you are in certain status. So one of the things that we talked about maybe a year and a half ago on is publishing some of the data that we get also to the public. And I know you said it was a lot of effort because certain things you had to peel out of it, right?
I'm sorry.
Our packets, remember that we talked about publishing.
Yeah, we did discuss that, and the decision was that we would put the memos. If you remember, Clark had some views on it wasn't the complexity of publishing it. It was the concerns about legal concerns.
Right. Certain things you couldn't disclose out.
Right. So that, to my understanding, we'd done what you all had wanted us to do. I didn't realize that there.
Yeah, I didn't realize
there was
that
a follow up on
we just
that.
had the discussion, and then it was maybe that was my mistake. But you know, just things like that. So we talk about different things in meetings, and then they're not always, I think, carried forward. But I mean, if we can keep track of them, like an action register, I think it'd be helpful for me, be helpful for our residents, and then helpful for the council.
There's mine.
Well, there you go. So publish something like that to where you go from meeting to meeting and see where you are, and you go from there. So that'd be a suggestion.
I think that's really kind of ties into some of the suggestions that I've had from people, is that, well, first of all, when people give public comment and we don't have a method for action of follow-up, like,
exactly,
a couple things that we've asked to add to the agenda are just things that have kind of been brought up and then no action was ever taken, and the council never really, followed through with really reviewing it, deciding. And that's why Roland and I, because in our campaign pursuits, we run into people saying, "God, I still don't have a resolution on this." And it's been years and we've been trying to do that. So,
Well, if you, I'll just tell you, if you have something like that, put it on email and send it to Julie or me or whoever's the mayor at the time. Everything that we do on that citizen comment, I follow up on it one way or the other. Everything.
well, and I think that's the biggest thing, is that.
And I don't tell anybody about it. I just do it.
If I could give any input that I think would be helpful for, future councils, is that I think the thing that is the most demoralizing for citizens that I hear is whenever they tell you what they feel or think or would like to somebody to check into, and they never hear. And I don't mean you. I'm talking about it never comes back around, where occasionally it does. I shouldn't say never, but where the council actually has a habit of going through and saying, okay, public comment was made about this, this action should be taken. This was done. Research should be done. Just whatever it is, where there's the tasks are assigned instead of, if I were the mayor, doing all that myself would be a lot. I think you must be extremely energetic.
It's my obligation, I think, to go back and make sure that they get
but it's still
a response to what they ask.
It's a loop of one person that.
But if something comes out of that, then we go further with it. Then I get with Julie or somebody else, and we need to do something.
Yeah, it's still it doesn't give.
The biggest frustration I get from people is that they're asking for something that is not practical or possible for the town to do, but they ask again and again and again.
Right.
But there are things that are out there that, we got to wait for a budget item, our trails over like Andre and them tonight. That's a bunch of money to do that. But, it's something we probably need to get around to figuring out how to do. But anyway, if you have things like that, write them down.
Yeah, well.
Let us know.
So
I'm just saying, they talk, we listen.
Right.
Other ear. And then unless they keep coming back in a lot of cases, it's just, like they never said it.
Tell me what those are. Tell me what those are.
Well,
not now, but send me an email.
Well, we're going to talk about one.
Okay.
And then the second thing is that I think it would be helpful when people are issuing complaints or concerns that are going to staff, that the council gets a report of those things. So I'm not talking about, I went to the can, there's no toilet paper. I'm talking about, I'm having drainage issues on this, or like Holly and her whole subdivision sent an email to every single council member and they got no response. And Julie had been on vacation. And I don't remember what all the circumstances were, but it rolled, and it wasn't until I think Barbara Isaacs found out about it. And then she, brought it up at a council meeting, and then it kind of aroused, like I had to go back and look at my emails. I did not see it. And it's when the whole subdivision had signed a petition.
There was a petition,
asking for help from the town. And, but that's an example of where if James gets a complaint or Julie gets one and it's impacting citizens, where it could turn into, gosh, I can't ever get anything done. It would be good, I think, if there was just maybe a list of them, like, hey, I got 2 complaints about X. You know, the speed limit out on the Stacy Road is, if people are speeding like
You don't want to
crazy.
know how many I get on that.
Yeah, I do too. I think we should, I mean, I know it's not on the agenda, but that's something that really needs to be addressed. And
Highway 5.
and
Yeah.
if I had thought of it, I would have mentioned it to Tolliver. I mean, because I've had several people tell me it's just way too speedy. But I mean, that's a good example of something that if they were calling Julie or Tolliver and telling them that we're just, there's way too much speeding on Stacy Road, that there was a way for those things to just a suggestion box almost, where the council just said, okay, well, we got a suggestion about this, you know, and I don't know when you do that, if you do it in the beginning, but it's just kind of a quick overview. We had public comment about these 3 things. You know, Ken report on this, Henry report on this, Julie report on this, or whatever. So that's just a suggestion that I have. I think that it would knit the community together a little bit more.
Okay.
So.
Actually, I have a couple more things. One, it goes back to the previous one, is why do we not allow the residents to see who's on the call?
We have changed the methodology now. We're not asking, we did a couple of things because we've had complaints about being able to get access. So we were requiring people to pre-register.
Sure.
We're not requiring that anymore. They're not having to do that. All they have to do is, Tanitras can kind of walk through the new procedure. And the second thing is people can just call in. They don't have to do anything. They use the call-in number, and we're not going to know if they're on or not. So we've changed it up, and hopefully this makes it easier for folks to be able to get access to the remote meetings, as long as we're going to have remote meetings.
And I think it is, from what I understand, heard from, you know, we'll find out what the feedback is, especially for
hopefully
it's easier to get on, but you're still on Rig Central. You can still, if you do log in through a computer and do put your name in or whatever, so you can, you know, see who's on. If they're sitting here in the audience, everybody can see who's here. I don't see why we would not publish that, or at least allow that to be, you know, because I guess you can do a FOIA request on it, but I don't know why we'd want to and not present that to whoever wants to see who's on. I mean, I've heard that from a number of people, that there's no reason why you can't see, because again, if we're open for business normal.
Is there a technical way to do that?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a checkbox on Ring Central.
Okay.
It shows up the list on the right side. Yeah, it shows up on you click it and it appears. You click it again, it disappears, but you can see the list of people who do it. I mean,
There might be some folks who might not want their name on there, but
well, then, you know, again, then
They're voyeurs. They just want to watch.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess the other item. So, can we add that to the action register to look into that?
I'm writing it down.
And then the other piece is, what's our process and procedure when a council member asks somebody from staff for something, some kind of information, to get that information? Is there anything in place? What's an acceptable amount of time? If it's something simple.
I don't, there's not a formal policy in place in terms of responding to council members. I'm not aware that there are any problems. If there are, you know, just let me know. I know we, you know, from time to time get requests from various council members, whether it's me or one of the other staff members. And to my knowledge, we've been responsive. If we're not being responsive, let me know.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I've not had an issue with anything between myself and you, but I have had something recently which dragged on for weeks and weeks, and even the follow-ups went on for weeks and weeks. So I don't need to address it here, but I just didn't know if we
just let me know.
in place.
Again, our goal is to be responsive and to get information. Again, depends on what you've asked for.
Sure.
But obviously our goal is
very simple stuff.
Yeah, our goal is to get information to you all when.
I mean, I was at the point where I was going to do a formal FOIA request. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, you need to let me know what that is.
Yeah, well, it went way past that.
Yeah.
But,
well, let's chat about it.
All right, we have another item that we want to talk about is Bridlegate open space and take any necessary action.
Make
I can
sure-
address that actually, because
guess-
we are working on it. I had a meeting with them last week, but
Yeah, you want to give them all the background?
well, the issue is that on the Bridle Gate, the corner of Meandering Way and Stacy Road, there is an acre or so in there that they have asked the town to take. One was water pricing was how it first started. And then they've asked people to take, the town to take on maintenance of that, mowing.
You might explain a little more, that it's it's that whole, that corner.
Well, it's that whole corner there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I have a picture.
Yeah.
But I can't show it. But yeah, it's the corner of there, and so anyway,
Basically, how did they get that? And
it was put in there by when the subdivision was platted. The town at the time, unfortunately, decided to take some land as opposed to taking money. We don't do that anymore like this with that little bit of land. The town, it was never documented well what happened. So there was a bunch of research done by Julie and folks to try to figure out, do we, the town, actually own that, or does the HOA own that? It was almost determined that the HOA owned it until Julie found a deed somewhere that
James
the town actually owns that.
Mhm.
So we had a meeting. I mean, I've been dealing with this for a long time, actually. We've had a meeting to talk with two of the representatives from the neighborhood, and we have agreed to get back with them and talk about whether or not we can take over that. How are we going to do that? I think we probably will. And then how do we deal with the water rates? Now, the water rates are such that they were tiered, and they were getting the top tier. We're going to see if we can lop that off and give them a lower tier.
Okay, so.
And one of the things that we're looking at is that you got to look at relative to what we do other places. So we're not setting a precedent one place or another. And we did that based upon how Summerhill Farms was handled, which is a long
They
time
have to have
ago.
a Park too.
And they had a park, which made it totally different.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that's basically it. It's land that was on the plat. It's called public park, and the HOA documents provided that the HOA would maintain all of the common area, including the public area, but it is in fact owned by the town. And the HOA would, as Henry mentioned, would like us to consider taking on some of the irrigation responsibilities and some of the mowing responsibilities. Where we left it with them is we would look at it, we would look at what we've done in other areas and get back with them, and we'll certainly bring it back to the council if it's required for action for the council to weigh in on that.
Well, I would like to suggest that we just nip it in the bud and just make a description of it, make a decision, because as Henry said, he's been dealing with this for a long time. And my understanding is that for 7 years, they've been asking people with the town or with politicians that are campaigning or with Henry or possibly Darian before that, which I think Darian was asked by the HOA the same question, that the issue for everyone who's here is that when the HOA, when Bridle Gate was first developed, the property was going to be in the HOA, but then somehow, I guess through a process of what are we going to do about the park contribution, they dedicated that corner to the town. But they've been paying for the watering, the mowing, and the maintenance of all that property, and it's costing them, each family, $50 a month, in addition to what they pay for just HOA dues. And then they pay property taxes and everything else, just like the rest of the citizens. And so their issue is that in other neighborhoods where there is a park, the town pays for it. And this is designated property. But what really is the main issue is that whenever Stacy Road was widened, the town received $69,000 for that property that was taken. And so the lack of an acknowledgement that there was a financial benefit to the town to own it, rather than all the HOA residents there are some residents who have property that backs up to Stacy Road And in their particular instance, they were paid, they were compensated, but the HOA was not compensated. And so this is, to me, a very basic appeal. The question is, do we think our public works can handle mowing and pay for they have 2 meters, and all they're asking you to do is, they're not asking you to do any landscaping.
Right.
They're just asking you to let the public works department take on the mowing, and then we take on the cost of the water.
And they
want
to do more landscaping.
Well, but they have said to me,
which is okay. We just need to work out how that works.
Their proposal is that any landscaping would be on them.
Right.
And that they're just asking because you could leverage what you've already got, a public works department, they're already doing mowing. And it's beneficial to the town, frankly, to have probably access to that property without having to take it or to, deal with, if they needed, let's say we had an internet carrier and all of a sudden we wanted to, add internet. I don't know, but there might be purposes for it.
The best thing for the town would be for them to take it back, because it should have never been given to the town in the first place.
Well, would we give them the $69,000? Because, I mean, that's the thing, is if we want to give them the financial benefit that the town took.
But none of that's on the table. We're going to take it. We're going to do what we need to do, because for me, it's an equity issue.
Okay, so
fair?
Mayor, you're saying that you've already made decisions. Can you make us a proposal to vote on tonight? Because we're all in.
It's not there's nothing to vote on.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is. Doesn't the council have to agree that we're going to take this on? Because we would.
No, I think the issue is we already own it. That was the thing that had to be determined, whether, so y'all can hear, the thing that had to be determined whether or not the town actually owned it or not.
Okay,
and that was
what
that.
decision have you made?
I haven't made any decision. We're going to talk to them and try to work out what the right decision
Can we have a
is.
discussion amongst us and then we decide tonight?
I don't know why we do that, because we need
We
to.
only have 2 weeks before December 1st, and you've been thinking about it forever. Julie's been involved in several dialogues with it. She's done a public information request. There's been interchange of emails. They've asked for multiple times for us to take this on. What else needs to happen in order for a decision to be made?
There is legal documentation that has to be changed in their CCRs. They're going to.
We can agree on that.
And I think we will. It's
But
just
why
a matter.
don't we now?
And we're actually going to have another meeting, because I don't know what we'd vote on. What are we going to do? What are we voting on?
You should make a proposal of what you want to agree to do for them, and then we'll all vote on it.
But I'm not sure what I'm going to agree to do with them.
But
because
you're not the only person. I mean, we can all agree.
But if the town owns it, it's an equity issue that we own it. We should maintain it.
Okay.
And we should deal with the water issue.
One of the things that we need to do is what's similar to what we did with Summerhill Farms. We need, because there's, again, the town owns property that the HOA's maintaining. We have the same situation to a certain extent in Summerhill Farms. We have the same situation in the villas. We have worked with those neighbors to document exactly who's doing what. And I think before you vote on anything, you'd want to have it in writing as to exactly who's doing what. Because what happens is if we just take a motion that says, well, we're going to take over maintenance of some portion of it without having it defined and really clear in a written document, that's going to get confused.
Out what we own?
No, it's not a matter of what we own. We know what we own. What we don't know is, you've got entryway features that they maintain. You've got irrigation that's associated with that. We've got to talk about how does all that get divvied up. And I think we need to have a couple more conversations with the HOA representatives to work that out and work up a document that can be considered.
Yeah, the problem is
we've told them that,
and we've told them that's what we're going to do, and they in fact agree that we need something in writing.
And they don't have any confidence that that's really going to happen, because in the past it hasn't happened.
Well, this is the first time we've had that conversation.
Is because we are all here. And
but I don't think
if
there's
it's going to require a vote from the council.
I don't think it will. I don't
well,
think there's
we can bring it back
on.
to the council.
Basically, this could start and stop with you having a discussion.
It can start and stop with not even me having. I'm sitting in the conversation. It could start and stop with the staff.
Yes, but what happens? Where do these dialogues go then?
The first dialogue that I'm aware of started in March when we had an item on the agenda regarding water billing.
Well,
If there were other
last year,
conversations, they were
heard
not.
about the same thing whenever John Cox was running. That's the first time I'd ever heard about it.
I can't
Told
speak
him
to that.
all about how they can't get the mayor to do anything, they can't get the council to do anything, that they can't get the staff to do anything.
Okay.
That basically they get left in, we'll get back to you. And they're just asking for a definitive answer.
We actually told them that we'd be able to maybe solve this thing by December 1st.
Maybe.
Be done with it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, but
They want, what is involved?
But if the HOA agreed to it, why are we discussing this now?
yeah, the HOA was here. They were upstairs. We had them upstairs. They were there, 2 of them.
The HOA agreed to what, Ricardo?
To the discussion. To what Henry is just saying. That we're gonna go back to get back at them. We don't know what to approve tonight.
Are we Ricardo, or is Henry?
Well, I don't know what. Suppose I don't even need to be involved in it. I just sat in it because.
I'm just saying, who has the authority to make the decision, and who's committed?
Right there,
to make
right
that-
there.
to make
We
the
own it.
decision?
We can handle it at the staff level.
It's
but
a staff issue.
The
It's
HOA
not-
has to
Thank
be
you, what
involved in
that's
this
gonna be.
process. It's not your decision, Cynthia. It's the HOA's. And as long as there was a meeting with
Ricardo,
staff or,
the HOA doesn't own the property, the town does.
but the HOA is involved in the maintenance of it.
And
we're taking the maintenance of it. That's the
whenever
discussion
they-
is to occur.
Whenever they planned to take care of the property, it's when they thought that they were going to own it. And then the developer gave it to the town. And unknowns to them, they did not know that they didn't own the property. As a matter of fact, even the HOA president, when she purchased her house, she did not know that that property was owned by the town. Now, just consider how you would feel if the town received $69,000 and the HOA has been asking that the town take on the expense of mowing and watering that area. And they haven't really pushed very hard on this because we didn't have a public works department for a long time, but now we do. And their families, it's not a very big development, and each family is spending $50 extra a month to maintain the city's property.
which is why I said it's a fairness equity issue, and we will solve that issue.
Okay, and so that's all I'm asking,
Okay.
is that, are we gonna really do that? Or are we gonna leave them strung out where next year when somebody's running for office?
Cynthia,
No,
Cynthia, we're really going to do it. Read my lips. We're really going to do it.
I believe you. I believe
You should.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ricardo, I know I'm not gonna be on council, but you tend to be very belittling. I just want you to know.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on to we
I
have,
still like you.
okay, let's move on. We will take care of that. I promise you. Okay. Future trails and taking necessary action. I'm guessing that's about Orr Road.
Yes, actually, I think I was even more specific when I requested that we put it on the agenda. But Andre Schuster sent us all an email, and it's funny because whenever he sent the email, he didn't know that we were putting this thing on the agenda, or at least I think he sent you an email.
I talked to Andre multiple times
Yes.
about it.
Yes. And so
That's the first time I've
just
heard
to
that
fill
other name.
everybody in, did you get a chance, Ken, to go?
What's that?
Did you get a chance to go and take a
Yeah,
look?
Charlie
at that?
and I went Saturday.
What did you think of it?
It's a dangerous road, and there's no place to get off of it. That's not without dispute. I can't speak to how many. We do have 1,100 homes in Heritage Ranch. I can't speak to how many people from Heritage Ranch walk down that way. The primary beneficiary is going to be those people that live on those 2 streets. But one of the first things I did was ask, where's our trail map now that shows what we have and what we don't have, and understandably that's been delayed from the Parks and Rec folks. But what we saw was that in the stuff that Israel sent shows a 15-foot area that could be used for a trail, but property that didn't get platted from there to the corner, the fence is right up against the ditch, And there's nothing shown on that document that Israel sent us that says anything about a trail easement. So I don't know what has to happen there. You know, the corner where the Longhorns are,
Yeah.
that fence would have to be moved back and all that vegetation taken down.
Well, he knew
And that-
that. He knew that it was on the,
But
we were
that
doing the-
document doesn't show an easement for a trail beyond what we all looked at, like last June or whatever. So I don't know what
Do you
the,
have that plat that Israel sent all of us? I think he copied you.
When was this? I don't know if I've seen that.
Oh, you don't have access? Yeah, he sent all of us a copy of it.
Like
We
recently?
Yes, today.
today.
Oh, today. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
we all
I was on the
have
golf
an-
course
they
today. I
have
didn't
an
look.
easement that they agreed to whenever they developed the property.
On the
There's two pieces to this. There was an
Yeah.
area that was in fact platted, and we did get an easement. That's up closer to
That's the
Fitchy
farm.
Mill.
That's the
Right.
farm guy. Oh,
And that exists. That's on the plat. And then when the property closer to Stacy came in, they didn't have to plat everything, and they didn't plat everything. But we did enter into an agreement with them that they would consider granting an easement.
They would give us an easement.
Right, but we haven't negotiated that. We don't have an existing easement. That doesn't exist. That was to be done at a future date. It's an agreement. That's correct.
Right, okay, so they agreed to one.
They agreed to work with us to establish one.
Yes, but they did agree to give us an easement because I voted on that and I specifically asked for an easement and they agreed to it.
Well, they didn't give us an actual easement. They gave us an agreement that said that they would work with us on establishing a future easement. That's what the agreement says. And I think we sent a copy of that agreement out to you all, and that was what was approved by the council at the time. That was
See the developer agreements.
we forwarded that, I believe, this today as well.
I'm just saying that when we were in that meeting, they agreed to give us an easement. And the
They did.
expectation is that the council, when we approve it, subject to them agreeing to give us an easement, that we're going to have an easement. And I
I'm
don't
not
think they had
disputing
any
that, but we don't have it at this point in time. We do not have an easement in hand. We do not have a
For the whole
designed,
thing.
platted easement in hand.
Just for the part closest to
Yeah,
Fitzhugh.
but
Right.
there's an agreement to give us one.
Right. But we don't have it in hand today.
Yeah, okay, so again, this is something that I think is really, really important. I think that it fulfills a large part of the vision.
let me mess it up. Let me mess it up a little bit though. Okay. And I've told Andre this is that road is going to be redone. There will be a real sidewalk put in there when this is done. What I want to know is when will that happen?
Why would we want it to be right by the road? Why would we want our kids walking right next to the road?
Just
That
until
was
we can't hear you very well.
the
Yeah,
easement.
talk to there.
That's why we asked for the easement.
But the easement would be along the road. I
No,
mean,
the
that's where
easement-
easements are,
It's a 15-foot easement.
right? But if they come in and redo that road, make it a 4-lane road,
And when were they going to do that?
it's on the plans. It's been there for a long time. That's my question. If it's in 2 years,
That's too long.
my question is, would you go spend, I don't know how much money it is, a lot. We've talked about this before, how much it costs. I don't remember the numbers of any.
300,000.
How much?
300,000 was
Okay,
my
would
last
we spend 300?
Now, was that for a concrete road or was it for a path?
concrete.
Yeah, because we don't need a concrete road.
Well, yeah, they've said
All they
that.
want is just a path so that they can walk,
Yeah,
ride their
I know
bike
it.
on the road.
Yeah. If we legally build a path for pedestrian use, the ADA requires it to be ADA accessible. We don't have a choice. If it's for pedestrian use, it has to meet ADA standards. If you want to spend public funds on a pedestrian trail. Now, the exceptions are, bicycle trails, equestrian trails, things that are not for pedestrian use. But if it's for pedestrian use, they don't give you an allowance for a crushed granite trail.
Well, what if we call it a bike trail?
Just call it a bike trail. then. They're just
What would that cost us versus, having a,
Oh,
pea gravel or whatever, or
yeah, you still have to do the drainage. It'd be certainly a lot cheaper than pouring concrete. You'll have to do the same amount of drainage work. You're probably going to have to do some retaining walls to keep it level in some of the really bad slopes. And then from there, it's just, you have to regularly reestablish crushed granite, but mostly it's the grading, the clearing, the drainage, and any walls will have to be done. But you'll save money on
There's Israel.
pouring the concrete.
Hey, Israel.
Israel's here now.
He's here.
So you're going to talk about this?
I can answer any questions you want.
We just want to know how are we doing?
How far along is it? How far along is it? What has to be done from the right of way, from easement perspective?
So you've got two different, so you got to remember there's two different property owners. So you've got the,
Can you speak close to the mic there, please?
sorry, Ardo.
Israel's here, by the way, in person.
So we
Okay, well-
have the property right at the corner of Fitzhugh Mill and Orr Road that was platted in those two lots, and they built those houses. We've got a small 15-foot easement for just the portion that they platted. The agreement that we were talking about covers the remaining portion of their ownership. And what that agreement does is that they have agreed to give us an easement at either they plat the remaining portion or that we proceed with the construction of the trail, whichever comes first. You also got to realize that between the end of their property and the corner of the intersection of Orr and Stacy, that's about 550 feet where we don't have anything.
That's right. There are 3 properties, actually.
Well, no, Jay Anthony gave us an easement.
What's that?
The Shacklefords gave us an easement.
No, the Shacklefords did not give us an easement.
Yeah, they did. If you go back and listen to the audio, they certainly did.
No, there's not an easement there. All they did was zone their property so they could build a house. They did not plat.
Okay, they zoned for 2-acre lots, as I remember, and they agreed to give us an easement. And I
They may
think
have
if you go
agreed to
back
give
and
us an
listen to the
easement at the time
audio.
of platting, but they've never had to plat. We don't require a plat to build.
Do they
one
have
house.
2-acre zoning over there?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I remember, and they agreed to give us an easement. And if you go back and listen to the audio, I can tell you for sure, because Tony Pruitt was there, and he anticipated that we were going to want the easement because he had already heard that the other ones granted one.
So let me ask a simple question. If we go and ask them for the easement, will they give us an easement?
Well, they already agreed to.
Well, then we should go back and ask them for an easement and see if they say yes.
Time of construction of the trail is what the document says.
Oh, is that what it
That's-
says?
No, that's the middle one. But the Shacklefords gave us an easement.
Which ones are
Or
the
at least they agreed
Shacklefords?
to.
Is that one of the
They
2
bought
houses? The new?
corner, and they built the farmhouse over on Stacy Road.
Oh, okay.
They completed
That's the Willis Farm property where the
All they did was get zoning, so there would have been no developer agreement. We have no written agreement with them.
So what do you do normally whenever they commit to give you an easement? You don't have a developer agreement?
We have a developer agreement when there's a development, but there was no, all they did was zone.
Conditions was they give us an easement.
It was straight zoning. You don't put conditions on straight zoning.
Well, they said that they would.
And they may very well might do that,
I'll
but
tell you what, when I voted on it, I was given the impression that we would be covered on that the town would cover that. It was, that, why would we talk about it and then not cover it in the documents?
because legally there would have been no requirement for them to have, there's nothing to require a document when they're strictly zoning.
Say that at the meeting.
Cynthia, I'd have to go back and listen to it. I don't know that was, I would have to go back and listen to the meeting.
The concern I have is that, it obviously was important to the homeowners and it was important to me for sure. Maybe I was the only council member it's important to, but I think others
Until we can't hear you.
did chime in. And I know that Charlie, I think Charlie was there for that. But the point being is that there was a presumption that we were going to have the easement.
If you all direct us to go forward and try to get an easement, we will certainly do that.
Before
we get an easement,
will it
though,
cost us anything?
No, they agreed to give it to us.
All right, well, I don't see any downside. Let's ask them if they'll give us an easement. I mean, that seems to be what the issue is.
And their question is going to be, where is this easement going to go? We haven't designed this trail. Right. We haven't done any work to design the trail.
And then, so designing the trail requires us to deal with the ADA requirements then.
Well, we would look at all of the construction costs associated with,
Yeah, I heard
with
that. That was
constructing the
news to me.
trail.
That's interesting.
I think if you all want us to move forward with this as a project, the last time we talked about it and the last action that I remember being taken was the agreement that we entered into on that middle piece, where at some point in the future we would consider, if you all remember the discussion, the park board is also going through an update of the park plan, and this particular project is one of the elements of that park plan. Of course, that got delayed because of COVID in terms of not being able to hold public hearings and all the other things associated with that. So all of that was being discussed at the time this was being discussed. And so the last action that I recall was the agreement that they would dedicate a future easement when we're ready to construct the trail. And that's not that last piece. We'll have to go back and, again, it was only zoning. So I know for certain that there would have been no requirement for us to force them to have a developer's agreement with us because it was strictly zoning, straight zoning.
Is the third section the middle part?
It's the one, it's closest to Stacy.
Yeah.
Closest to Stacy.
Yeah. Okay, Clark.
Is there a question?
Is there an answer?
I didn't hear a question. I'm sorry.
No, there was no question.
I'll just say this. I mean, just for clarity, there is no easement unless it's in writing. There's no such thing as an oral easement. It's not enforceable. It has to be in writing. It has to be either a separate instrument granting the easement in writing, or it has to be shown on a plat. So the other part is the ADA. You know, we looked into this in a different situation a while back, Julie, you may recall. You can't just call it a bike trail. If you let pedestrians access it, it's a pedestrian trail. If it's public property and pedestrians are allowed to access it, then you've got to make it ADA compliant.
How do you,
Clark,
how do you keep the pedestrians from accessing it if it's a bike trail?
Bicycles only, and you enforce it.
So you put a sign up that says bicycles only.
Correct.
Is there a size requirement for a pedestrian trail?
Yeah, there's size requirements, slope requirements, material requirements to allow for, you know, wheelchairs. James is more familiar with those aspects, but we encountered that to some degree, I think, meandering way when we were looking at that access going across the street connecting parks.
Is Roadrunner made out of concrete, James?
Yeah, it's a concrete trail.
It's narrow. The issue with Roadrunner, it's narrow.
And
that's the issue Andre was looking at.
And you can do an asphalt trail that meets ADA. It's got to be a hard surface. It doesn't have to be concrete, but asphalt or something else that's hard.
Yeah.
Is any part of Roadrunner Trail not concrete?
I believe it's all concrete.
What about Remington?
Road-
Is Remington a,
What's that?
The Roadrunner is across the street from where the trail comes out.
Oh, where it goes into
Across the street,
River
there's
Oaks
a
1?
narrow
That's concrete as
path
well.
that goes across maybe 3 or 4 people's.
Where it's
property.
got the emergency
Yeah.
access into,
No, this is like 4 feet wide
but where is it?
across the street.
That's the Visano track.
Yeah, the one that goes in, that's the emergency access into River Oaks 1.
For what? For a bicycle? It's
That was-
4 feet wide.
Okay.
It's on the same side of the creek as where Roadrunner ends.
Oh, it's on the
across
same
the
side of the
street.
creek. Okay.
And
It's on the other side of
Front
Meandering.
beside the
Heights.
emergency
and it's,
access.
and it's for people to walk down to get on Roadrunner Trail.
Okay.
I don't know whether, I was going to ask James if he knows who built it. I don't know if
There's a
homeowners did it or.
no. The town built that as a result of a
that took
lawsuit.
a long time. I remember that.
There's a whole story that goes with that, Ken.
Maybe I don't want to know.
Yeah. There's a fairly long story that goes with
But
that.
that's what's being pointed to as this would be okay. you know.
Right, right, yeah. And I don't remember the details on that because I remember there was an ADA discussion on that as well. And I don't.
It's concrete and
No, I'm talking about
the one that
going into River Oaks
Vistano's.
one. That's
There's
concrete.
you've got the access easement, which is in Grasscrete, and then right next to it is a narrow trail that was part of the settlement
Yeah,
agreement.
because that's why I remember the grass creek
Right.
going in there.
Yeah.
This has got a
I
fence.
thought Remington
It's got a fence,
wasn't
yeah.
concrete, James. Wasn't the one in Remington a walking trail that was crushed granite?
No, Remington is concrete all the way to Beaver Run Park.
Oh, I thought one of my Diana Muffet, she
You
rides her
can-
horse all the time.
Yeah,
I
you
just
can
walked that.
She said it's not concrete.
you can utilize you can have alternate paths in a park. You can have some that are made out of concrete that give ADA accessibility, and then you can have others that are the crushed granite that wouldn't give wheelchair access, for example. But you have alternate ways of getting around, which we do have. In this instance, you're talking about a trail that is the only trail.
Access in a safe manner.
To walk up on the side of a road. Yes, I mean,
Yeah,
I get
what
it.
what I
get
would
it.
suggest we do, where this last was left is we were not ready to move forward with. We talked about the design of a trail, the cost associated with putting that together, and at the time the council wasn't ready to move forward with that. We talked about the 200,000, and at the time the council chose not to move forward with it. If the council wants us to move forward with a design, before we make decisions on this, let us do some design work on this because there hasn't been any design work done
Okay.
and some
I'll say this,
analysis.
that at the time, the concern is that if we didn't get access while we were giving them the zoning, we'd never have it. So that was the thing, is that we wanted access on the property so that it could be further away from that road.
Yeah.
The second thing was, at the time, there was no funding for it. But in between, it was a $200,000 item was added for landscaping medians. And we had a discussion that 200,000 was added and that it was not agreed by the council that we all wanted medians and that we should make that $200,000 available for a park project. And then I think the park board met and they kind of talked about some different options. And the last I heard, it was just up in the air.
No, the park board has identified where I would put this project. And keep in mind, the park board has a whole series of projects. I don't know if you all want to pursue feedback from the park board before you finalize this, because you might want to. I know that they have some very specific recommendations. You all have seen their plan. You've seen the phased-in plan that would be presented to homeowners or to residents when the public hearings are held. So you might want to get some feedback from the park board before you finalize anything on that.
Well, number one, I don't live over there, and I don't live in Heritage Ranch, even though I'm going to get there as soon as I can. And the people over there have a legitimate concern. It is the vision of Fairview to be able to connect the areas so that you can have an restricted, path.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent a fortune on a concrete trail on Stacey Road, and this is not connected, and there's an opportunity to do it. We have the money for it. We have the need for it. And I don't know what we're waiting on, other than we could spend it somewhere else, but we're better. I'd really like to know what priority is greater when you consider how dangerous that is over there. And I think, to Ken's point, even though he doesn't know how many people, that a lot of people in Heritage Ranch do ride their bikes and they do walk. And that would complete a loop where they could go all the way back around to their entrance. But it also would enable people that are coming from the opposite direction to be able to at least come down and ride down to Summit and then come back, or, head out to, I wouldn't want to get on 317, but it's an unfinished part of the vision. And so if we're not going to do it, then let's just tell them no. And I don't mean like today. I'm saying let's not string them out and say, okay, well, we're going to consider it. We'll get around to it. if it's not going to happen for 5 or 10 years or never, or not until the road is widened, then, I think eventually you just have to tell people this is what the council's decided.
What if we take so granted, we haven't done the plan, and that may be something that James can look at, or Israel and James. But what if we take that $200,000, because we don't know if that median, if Alan will ever do anything with it, and allocate it to this. And then if it's more money than the council that can add the delta, or maybe there would be less money spent if it's a crushed granite or whatever. But, take that $200,000 that's available right now for Stacy Median and move it to this project, so the money is there. And then once James does the design, and then we acquire the easement, that we can go ahead and start that process.
I would just say, I think we can forget about any other surface besides, based on what our attorney has told us, we're gonna do the same kind of trail we do everywhere else.
So let me
be a hard
try.
trail. By Henry,
go ahead.
You made a good point. I mean, somebody knows the timing on Ore Road work. Let's ask them what it is.
Yeah,
At
it's
least
the
so
county.
we know.
The county would know.
I don't know, but
I don't know the answer, and I haven't asked, but the county would know.
But
And we're
I would
asking.
be surprised if it's as soon as we would want it. So
Well, there's also some other objections too, Ken, is that there's a running stream right along that road, and it would be very expensive and James told us that, to have to put a concrete sidewalk over that stream. And so that was part of the reason why an easement was so important, is because it could get you up off of
to get
the
the
road
other
where
side
you
of it,
wouldn't have
yeah,
to be
right.
building it
Right,
over.
right.
Is part of that expansion of Ore Road, are they going to raise that up? Because when it rains, that's a roaring rapids that
One would
covers the
guess
road.
that whenever the county does that, they're going to do it right. They're going to make it a 4-lane road.
Well, they're going to have to raise that quite a bit.
Oh, no question, no question. But
Well,
that whole area
it
out
floods.
there.
Oh, it's every time. I've
Yeah.
got video of it.
It's
Oh yeah, it's been.
I'm
badly.
surprised people when it's running. I'm surprised some of these guys attempt to go across it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's closed regularly.
Well, people go across it when it's
Well,
closed.
that's their problem. But the county closes it when it
But
gets
they
up
do
above.
close it regularly.
Oh, I no doubt.
One other thing, just before I forget, I don't know if they've told you this, but the construction vehicles are getting so much mud in their tires.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
When the construction vehicles come off back to the road, they spin off all this mud, and sometimes they can't get their cars over the mud. It's the clay in that mud.
Oh, that's sitting in the road.
Living over there.
Oh, I haven't
They
heard
get
this.
stuck in
Okay.
there
Oh,
and
yeah.
they can't drive their cars over it.
And this is construction coming off of those houses that are being constructed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a lot of, I don't know if you've checked the drainage, but that you don't want to do that too, James, because that one house they tore that house down and then built that other house up on the hill, and they're getting a lot of.
They just sodded all that.
Yeah, they just
But the
stabilized.
truck was that ran
I
off
met
the
with them
side.
last week. They just got it stabilized, and they just put down Curlex. They just put solid around the house. They just seeded that slope, so the worst part should be over.
I know they'll.
All right, so let me. I'm going to modify your plan of action here a little bit. So I want to find out when the road's going to go in. I think that's important that we know that. So we're asked the county and see if we can get a time. I have no idea what that number is. We'll find out what the time is. Secondly, let's find out what's on the park board. These people do a lot of work. We ought to honor what they do. So let's find out what the park board plan is. And assuming that neither of those cause us any oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, then we'll go to the next step. Let's do a design. I'm not sure I want to take the $200,000, but it's out there. And the reason I don't want to do that, because one of these days they're going to ask to do it. And it could be next year. But we can find other money to do this if we have to. So that's why I don't really want to vote on that.
Yeah, why can you just get the median money whenever you need it? If it's easy to get it, then.
Well, we've already put that money aside, and
Yeah,
when
but
it's going to be like when they come out and do something on a road, we got to come up with enough money all of a sudden, and sometimes
Yeah,
we're
but
not playing for it.
Yeah, but when you say that though, we made that allocation last year.
It was a year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago. When Stacy finally completed, however long that's been.
Yeah, that was
Right.
part of the deal when they completed. We were
Exactly.
supposed to
So
pay for that.
Alan dragged their feet. So if we, if they decide tomorrow, hey, let's do it. What's to say we can't say, hey, we'll need 6 months.
Well,
right.
I just happen to know that I get calls about why haven't we landscaped that yet? So just be aware of that.
I understand, but I mean, again, I think.
But
it's-
I'm
we're-
not
we're
against
solving a-
totally doing that. Let's
Yeah.
find out the two things. When's the road going to be built? Then what does Park Board have to say about this? And then go forward to the next things. Then if we need to use that 200,000, I'm not totally against that, but I'd rather
What
find
if
it
what
elsewhere.
if what if we change it up just a little bit?
Okay.
So I'm good with that, but allocate that money now, and if you don't need it or something goes right, you can move it anywhere else you want.
I'd rather let's find out what it's going to cost, then we'll allocate the money. I don't mind using the money. I'll just tell you that, okay? But I don't want to vote on anything to do anything. I want to go forward with it in a logical way to get this, to find out because we got the ADA issues we got to deal with. How do we get around that?
But you're going to have to do that either way, right? So if you decide to
Yeah.
do a trail over there, whether it's, crushed granite or whether it's concrete or whether it's asphalt, you're going to have to, whatever Clark says,
Yes, we'll have to deal with
right?
it.
You're going to have to deal with it either way. But it's a life safety for these people, right? Because
I understand. You don't
right?
want to walk along this road. I've been down there.
So again,
So until I have some idea what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, I don't want to move money around yet. That's my only reason.
Would you agree to make it a rolling item on the agenda?
Sure.
Yeah, at least then it doesn't just fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
What I have discovered is the most disillusioning to citizens is not whether you say yes or no, it's whenever they don't ever know if we're ever going to ever address it. And I just know it's part of the vision is to connect all the trails, and it's
Every council since I've been around, everyone takes steps to extend our trail system. We've done it. We just did over here. Big one.
I know, and I haven't been on that one.
You need to do it. Okay.
I think we should have a going away party for the 3 council members over on the trail. We all walk it together.
All right. Is that okay if we do that? We're having an agenda item every month. We're talking about what we're doing so we can track progress on it. The action register. Oh, well, maybe that's the start of the action register.
It's a rolling agenda item. It's on there every month anyway.
Yeah. So, all right. So the last item says recognize outgoing council members. I'm recognizing.
Oh, thank you. It's been so nice knowing y'all. You might not ever see me again after.
Somehow I don't think that's the way it's going to be. You will be out there keeping us honest, if nothing
I
else.
think you should put me on some project that will be
Like
beneficial,
the Ore Road Trail project.
like creating a community out of the town center. I think that would be the CDC working on community. I would do that.
CDC working on community.
Yeah.
We had an events council one time. It didn't work very well.
Well, you just didn't have a lot. But I'm a promoter and an advocator. And
Yeah.
I'd probably be really good at that. That's about the only thing I can think of right now.
Okay.
But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to.
Tony, we're remembering you too, by the way, if you're still on here.
I appreciate being remembered. It was great work with you guys.
Tony,
hey, one thing that we didn't talk about, Henry, just so everybody else knows.
Yeah.
That, as you guys know, we worked hard on getting Julie her performance appraisal.
Yes.
And Henry and I were actually able to do this before the pandemic. So that was mission accomplished. I know Henry, you're taking the ball and going to run it from now on. We have that process set up with Judy. So, but I don't think we ever let anybody know. I don't think we let the whole council know that we actually did it. And really what Julie wanted to focus on this year is a strategic plan. And I think that's very appropriate given kind of the change, the new council starting, and be a good way to form your leadership, Julie, for the new council.
Absolutely.
Good words. All right. Anybody else? Do we have anything going on we need to tell people about?
Roland, did you want to say anything?
We are adjourned. Drive careful going home. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.